about now? Yes. Good morning. I'm going to let you filter in. We've got about, we don't have any minutes. Welcome. I'm so excited to see so many of you this morning. This is our 6th We Are NC Gov conference. It's not our 6th annual because they weren't in a row. As you guys know, there was a minor interruption in time. But I'm very excited to see you guys in person. I mentioned to my coworkers, especially to see you guys fully clothed, like not just from the top up. It's really nice. So as you know, this conference is a free half-day conference given by NCDIT to really, to have the state employees and others come together to talk about digital issues. And this year it's so important. It's all about accessibility. So we're excited to give you this information. Before we get started, I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker. I want to just do a little bit of logistics. The restrooms are to my right. Oh, look, I could go like this. No, they're not. They're only over there. The restrooms are over here both. Snacks are here for everybody. Just kind of be mindful if you get up during someone's talk. Also, I want you to know, if you go around the way you came in, past the front desk in a U, there's a training room down here that I'll be referencing later. There are going to be some interactive sessions down there, so I just want you to know to go around. You can do that. And like I mentioned, I said the snack thing and I said the restroom. Yes, that's it. I'm excited to bring our keynote speaker up. She is the State Chief Information Officer, and she's also like my top boss. So, Tina Piccioni joined NCDIT in January 2025. Before joining us, she served as Managing Director for Cloud and Customer Engineering at Google, working with major sectors such as telecommunications, media, entertainment, and gaming. Her extensive background includes leadership roles at RTI International, Fidelity Investments, and AT&T. Her vision for North Carolina's future success is built on empowering state agencies and residents to leverage innovative IT as a source of inherent trust and safety and security. Her priorities include artificial intelligence, the NC 911 board, cybersecurity and privacy, all reflecting her unwavering commitment to enhancing North Carolina's technological infrastructure for public safety and personal privacy. Recently celebrated as High Point University's Data in Residence Expert and awarded Innovator of the Year in 2025, and she rocks a really good brooch. Please join me in welcoming Secretary Piccioni.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you all for being here. And by the way, for this lovely building, I am so excited. This is my first NC Gov event to be with all of you, and what an amazing topic that we get to talk about. So I want to also thank my DIT. I never can say all of this really quickly, so I have to slow down, which is just not in my nature. But to my comms team, and to the Digital Commons team and everyone who has worked so hard to not only put this together, but to be here, my gracious thanks. And again, for DEQ for sponsoring us and letting us be in this beautiful building. If they could just leave, I could be happy to take it over. That was my outside voice. It was not part of my notes. But thank you all for being here, especially early on a morning that had a little bit of rain, a little bit of sun, a little bit of weird temperatures as we continue to ride the funness of North Carolina. You know, the one thing I will tell you that we are committed to, and that's every North Carolinian can access digital government services. So in case you're curious, every single DIT employee has a new badge. We did have red, yellow, green badges. We now have a white badge because it's accessible. If you're colorblind, you cannot see the green, yellow, and red. So the first priority that we had was how do we make it accessible for everyone to be able to not only visualize who our employees are, but for the employees to see it as well. So when it comes to accessibility, we have to think and break the mold of what's traditional and think, how can we serve every single person? It's a commitment that is stated in the state of North Carolina's digital accessibility and usability standard that's been developed to offer that guidance to prioritize a digital-first public experience for every single person. Let me be clear. It should not be an option. It should not be an afterthought. It should be embedded and ingrained in every single thing we do, every piece of code that we are writing, and every single bit of software that we design. We should not do it unless that is at the forefront. The U.S. Department of Justice Title II Americans with Disabilities Act finally came to the same conclusion. And in April of 2026, there is a compliance that all states must comply to. It should have been there years ago, but now that it's here, we are here to help you and make sure that every single website, every single bit of data that is used is accessible for all. And in a minute, you're going to hear from an amazing panel that I can't wait to hear from, by the way, on how we're going to do it and do it with speed. I know that this takes a lot of work and coordination. It takes a different mindset as we have to understand and have to get into the minds of how to make things accessible. We have created checklists, we have created planning guides, we have created training modules to help every agency build accessibility from the ground up. But where you need more, we are here to help. Our Digital Commons platform supports 88 state websites. Guess what? There's more than that out there in case you're curious, which means we still have more to do. So as we look at it, how do we make sure every single website is accessible everywhere we are? And we don't actually charge for that. Other states may charge for it. We don't, because to me it's table stakes. It's part of what we should be doing in our everyday job. Digital Commons is a platform that is scalable, secure, and an open source platform. It serves 170 million web requests per week and enables consistent, inclusive service for all 11 million North Carolinians. The platform earned the State Government Experience Award, recognizing North Carolina's leadership in delivering that accessible user experience. Throughout our efforts, our goal is to empower our staff and each one of you that are integral in designing this to have not only the tools you need, but the ability to do it, from procurement to content creation to accessibility, and embedded in every single thing you do. You play that critical role, because without you, it wouldn't be possible. I hope that you get time today to connect to each other. I don't want you to leave this room without meeting someone new, and then I want to take that a step further. I want you to follow up with them. You know, we all leave everywhere we go and we say, so good to meet you, nice to see you. And then you leave and you'll say, I'll keep in touch. And then you never hear from them again until next year when you see us at the conference. So my goal to each of you is be accessible to each other, learn from each other, make sure that you are taking the best ideas and incorporating them in everything that you're doing. Together, we can use those best practices to embed in the tools, to embed in support for each other, and to, again, make sure that we're delivering for every North Carolinian. As we look at it, AI has become a huge focus. People are sometimes worried and have fear about it. I will tell you, AI has been around for quite a while. We use it every day and don't even realize it. Everyone with an iPhone is using AI. Everybody that uses a map system is using AI. The one thing I will tell you is, from chatbots to the language to even being able to utilize it to help with accessibility, it makes it to where you can have an ease of what you're doing to be able to concentrate on the most important thing, and that's delivering that accessibility. Don't be afraid of the tools, and we're here to help. Make sure that you have the right ones to be able to do your job. As we look at it, you're going to have another look at it this afternoon in an AI and accessibility one. I hope that each of you have time to be able to do it and look at it. We also, here's another plug, December 3rd and 4th at the Raleigh Convention Center, we're going to have a cybersecurity and AI conference, and this topic will come up. So if you have time, I was just able to open up another 100 slots because they had closed registration, and I told them that just wouldn't work for me. So now we're opening it back up to where everybody who hasn't signed up, please sign up for the conference, and we'd love to see you. It is absolutely free, and we do provide food. Look at that. But as we look at it, we must drive that innovation. And as we drive the innovation, I encourage each of you, look at innovative ways you can do your job differently. Look at how you're delivering everything you're delivering. Is there a better way? Is it faster? Is it more accessible? How can we be able to serve each other better? I want every single interaction with our state to be intuitive. I want you to be able to get on a website and it anticipate what you need prior to you actually having to find it. I want it to be to where when you look at it, the colors matter, the print matters, and the access matters. As we look at it and go, we want to also make sure that as accessibility is fundamental, so is cybersecurity. And as we look at embedding and protecting more of the websites that every single North Carolinian accesses, be mindful of cybersecurity, and that is why we are asking everything to go to a .gov and be put under a digital commons umbrella. We want to make sure that every interaction is protected. Right now, unfortunately, there are nefarious characters everywhere, and the state of North Carolina seems to be a real shiny object target right now. So as we are going through, let's make sure we keep that in mind and that we get the right people in and we keep the nefarious characters out. As we continue to focus on operational effectiveness and streamline our processes, we want to make sure we are serving you well. So you have my commitment. If there is a problem, if you find something that you think that you could have a change made and it would be easier, let me know. Email me, send me a note, text me. I answer in all ways. Maybe not in 24 hours. I'm still working on that. Apparently, I say this a lot, and people take me up on it. So if you could take me up on it, tell me what you need. What are you not getting that we can provide better and faster for you to be able to not only have that accessibility, but do your job. As we look at it together, we can build that safer and stronger North Carolina, but it takes all of us. And it takes all of us thinking through what does that look like from the very first moment you're thinking to that design step and then the integration. So as you finish the rest of the conference, thank you for being here. Enjoy the coffee. Oh my gosh, y'all, did y'all see the food out there? I'm just saying, make sure there's none left when you leave. But thank you for being here. Thank you for your time, for serving not only each other, but every North Carolinian. It means the world to me, and this is where my absolute heart is. I have always had accessibility teams in my entire career, and I can tell you as I've done it, that's where my absolute heart is. Ooh, making sure that didn't move. I touched a button. So thank you again for your time. Enjoy the conference, and I can't wait to hear the expert panel. So Liz, let's bring them up.
Thank you, Secretary Pachoni. I just want to make sure I have that right. So yeah, our digital accessibility open forum panel is next. These are experts. They're going to allow you to ask questions and answer some of the most common questions. So Amy Hepler, Phoebe Simon, and John Cotter. Let me get this.
I think so.
Hello? Oh, yep, mine's on.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I guess that one's on too.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm Amy Hepler. Yep.
I'm the lead accessibility developer here at DIT.
I'm Phoebe Simon. I'm a web strategist, and I manage the DubBot software that monitors accessibility for all websites.
I'm John Cotter. I'm a digital experience and accessibility specialist with NC DIT.
Thank you. Want to just say one quick thing. Does everybody know about Title II and what it is? Sorry. Okay, well, let's kick off some questions.
Okay, well, let's get to, we're going to do a little bit of warm-up exercises.
Yeah.
So, raise your hand. Raise your hand if you've ever increased the font size on your device. I see a lot of you. Raise your hand if you used your phone in bright sunlight and couldn't see the screen. Raise your hand if you've ever tried to click on the tiny button on your phone and you missed it. Raise your hand if you filled out a form on your phone where your keyboard covered submit. Raise your hand if you've gotten frustrated because a form wouldn't tell you what you did wrong. Okay, and raise your hand if you ever yelled, "I am not a robot," to CAPTCHA. Okay, so everybody here has raised their hand at least once, and this goes to show how accessibility is in our everyday lives.
It's true. One of the questions that we get asked the most, well, first we're going to ask that people think about questions that they might have about accessibility. There's a microphone here at the center, but let's be mindful, we only have a very short time for this panel, so if you do have a question, please don't hesitate to ask it, but we're also going to give you our contact information at the end, so if we don't get to you, we will get to you if you email us. But one of the questions that often comes up for us is, when thinking about Title II, do websites that are behind a login need to meet accessibility standards? Now, my first question back to you is, does everybody know what Title II is? That looks like a lot of no's. I mean, I see a couple, of course, you would know, but a lot of us maybe don't know. So, Amy, do you want to quickly go over what that is?
As Tina had mentioned earlier, Title II is a DOJ rule that requires all state and local government digital resources, websites, applications, meet a certain criteria to make it accessible for everybody. And these are called the Web Accessibility Content Guidelines, or WCAG, WCAG. And you can think of these as a blueprint that you can use for your site. To Phoebe's question, we get this a lot. Well, does that apply to my sites that are behind a login? Title II applies to public accessible websites behind a login. So if you have a site that the public accesses, regardless if they log in, that must meet the Title II guidelines. And for the state, the compliance date is April of 2026. If we have any local government here, it depends on your entity size. If you're smaller than 50,000, you have another year. Now, that doesn't leave you off the hook for your intranet sites, for your employee-only accessible intranet sites. These, while they don't fall under Title II and have a compliance date, they fall under other civil accessibility laws, equal opportunity. So they too are required to be accessible.
Yeah, thank you, Amy. While you're thinking about your questions, we just are putting some ideas of topics up here to maybe get your juices flowing. But we'd love to, this is a panel, so throw the questions at us. Please come up to the microphone here in the middle and let us know what your accessibility questions are. Yay!
I'm going first. I'm Nicole Shoemaker. I'm in the IT department at Wake County. I have lived and breathed digital accessibility for the last year, trying to self-educate. Absolutely love the resources you guys provide. So my most burning question right now is this. The Title II states, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't have it memorized, we are responsible for ensuring accessibility of public content provided either directly or through contractual, licensing, subscription, or other arrangements. And I am trying to understand what other arrangements includes and excludes, particularly because I've got departments like our housing department and human services where, let's just take housing for example, their website has a page with dozens of links to local housing resources, homeless shelters for women and children, food pantries, things like that. So they're local agencies. We definitely have a relationship with them. We are sharing links to their websites from our website. Is that our responsibility to ensure that that content is accessible under the phrase other arrangements?
So your question was, when you link to another person's resource, are you responsible for the accessibility of that resource, even though you didn't build it, you're just linking to it? Is that the question?
Well, that's one example. My main question is more generally the definition of that other arrangements, because the contractual arrangement is very obvious, subscription, license, very easy to define, but other arrangements is very broad.
It is, it's very broad, and I mean, we're not a team of lawyers up here, we're a team of accessibility specialists, so it's hard to answer that, what does that really mean? I would say consult your general counsel to get a good answer to that. We've consulted our general counsel about certain questions, legal type questions, and we've gotten some good responses, but that's a great one, and we would need to do some research and look more into that. Did you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you read the Title II rule, they leave a lot open for interpretation, as you've seen. And even the examples that they give that are exceptions, they use the language, this may be an exception. Well, that's not very helpful, right? I would say anything that is on your behalf posted on another site, if it's applying for your resources or services, then I would make sure that that's accessible if you can. Now, I know that's hard because sometimes leaders are living on other people's websites and you don't have any control of that, but if there's any way that you can, I would do that. And as John said, yeah, the other definition is really broad, so we can get an understanding of that and come back and encourage you to see your general counsel as well.
What about the question about linking out to another resource, another website, linking out to it?
Oh yeah, so if you link to something that you don't control, how can you be responsible for that, right? So when you can, try to link to content that you trust and you would trust, to give to other people. But if you didn't make it, you're not responsible for it. If North Carolina built it, if you built it, if you had a third party build it on your behalf, then it is your responsibility and it should be accessible. Great question, thank you.
Good morning, my name is Victoria Hudson. I serve as Environmental Health Director in Orange County. I have a question about public records that are currently accessible, that are often PDFs, and what's going to happen when people have to log in. I'll give you examples like the Register of Deeds documents and the documents that we maintain for environmental health. They're all public record now, and what is the expectation, or what are you hearing that other communities are doing to take care of these kinds of public records that are PDF?
Great question, great question. Do we need to repeat that question? Did everyone hear it okay? Okay. Do you want to take it? Go ahead.
Can I ask, do the PDFs that you're hosting behind the login, are they specific to a person?
Pass it.
Currently, they're not behind a login.
Okay.
They're all publicly accessible.
Okay.
And so they would not be something that would be considered personal information, obviously, but it would be like the public records, like when you look up a deed, that renders as a PDF when you click on that little button.
So it's basically informational, so if somebody wants to use your service, that would fall under, if it's, it would be applicable, right?
Yep.
It is
Yeah.
It would need to be accessible.
It would need to be accessible.
If you're publishing a document that someone needs to be able to access government services, get something from the government, then the ADA says that after the April date, those documents need to be accessible.
Yeah,
And if you can get it accessible
that's
before then.
a tremendous bad feeling I have right now.
Oh yes, yes. Yes. I felt that
those-
come
those-
over the
those
entire
deeds
room.
from 1600s where, King Charles's land grant
Yes.
that's written in some sort of cursive that nobody can read.
Oh.
Yeah.
Those, yeah, I'm having a moment just now. Sorry,
Yeah.
y'all watched me just stroke out right there. But anyway, so yes, I think that our local government is going to be putting things behind some kind of fascist login that's just going to maybe check the checkbox that it's a login and everything's still going to be publicly accessible.
Yeah.
When you say, you mean publicly available? Publicly available, yeah, okay. Yeah.
Given that you have so many, the strategy that John put up for PDFs would be very helpful. And I would recommend that you look at creating some kind of roadmap. That can be helpful if it comes down to it and you're in front of a judge. You have this roadmap of what you've done and what you're planning to do.
Yeah, let me talk about that strategy a little bit. So we published a resource on it.nc.gov under the /accessibility. There's a document section in there, and in there we published something that we're calling the strategy to remediate a large PDF library. And so that would be a really great resource to help give you a strategy. What do we do with all these documents? We got thousands of them. What do we do? So briefly, the strategy is you're going to categorize and prioritize your documents into 4 categories. What are you going to retire? What are you going to pull offline so that it's not a problem, nobody can get it? What do we just not need to be online anymore? What are you going to convert to HTML? Because HTML is it's a lot easier to make HTML content accessible than documents, PDFs. What are you going to archive? That means keep it online, but it qualifies for an exceptions, which Phoebe can talk about in a second. And then what are you going to actually remediate? What are you going to make accessible? So that's the strategy, and look for that online. We could send that link out later possibly, but go ahead and talk about the exceptions.
I do want to just reiterate that John and Amy have put together a really great set of resources for everyone about remediation and about the first steps to take, because it is overwhelming. I hate to even bring up exceptions, because I think people are like, "Oh, that's exciting. What do I not have to do?" But there are certain exceptions to the DOJ ruling on PDFs, and again, consult your legal team as you're thinking about what maybe I don't have to remediate, because there are some rules about what you can let go. But again, let's just try to see what we have. And if you need to look at the number of PDFs you have, come see me back here. We can go through it via DebBot, and it'll show you how many PDFs are on your site, where they're linking from on your website, and then we can see if they have some of the accessibility requirements already in place.
And one thing to add to that, even if your PDF is an exception, if somebody requests an accessible version of it, legally, you must provide one.
And the deadline, according to the DOJ, is April 24, 2026. So coming up, that's the deadline for state governments. Local governments, it's extended a little
Over
bit.
50,000.
North Carolina loves a PDF. They just love PDFs.
Yeah, we really do.
Let's move away.
Great question, thank you.
Any other questions?
I got one for Phoebe. What is the most commonly reported accessibility issue in DubBot?
Great question. So for those of you that don't know, DubBot is a software as a service crawler that we have contracted with that will crawl a website and identify accessibility issues, misspelled words, broken links, you name it, we crawl it. It's a great resource, and it's free to all of the North Carolina state agencies. So I have broken it into two different categories. So we have the agencies that are on the Digital Commons platform and the just all of the state agencies, whether they're on the platform or not. Two of the most frequent issues that come up is not having a title for an iframe, which we can talk about in a minute if you like. And for those not on the Digital Commons platform, it's color contrast. That is consistently the most frequently found issue.
Text contrast.
Text contrast, or button contrast, or link contrast, which is a fairly simple thing to fix and correct and identify. So please, let's leverage DubBot and at least pick the low-hanging fruit that we can get fixed.
Secretary has a question.
Oh, I have a question. I'm going to give it to Amy then. I don't want to answer. Oh.
Yeah, let's give it to Jim.
What if I want to get on the Digital Commons platform?
Oh.
You have a website? Come on.
So I can just.
You got a
I can
website?
just
What's your
sign up?
website?
How many of y'all want to sign up? And let them take care of it.
Tina.gov.
There you go. And then my other question is, are there any AI tools that help convert PDFs to HTML
Yeah.
and then make it fast and easy for y'all to do it to where you're not spending all your time doing it because there's a tool that can help you while they crawl the rest of the websites? Just asking.
I'll take
And if not, I can give you the answer.
I can certainly answer that first question about how do you get on the Digital Commons platform. We are ready, willing, and able. And if you would like to get on the Digital Commons platform, Yelena Telenker is right here in the front row. She would be delighted to take your information and we can get that started. As far as AI resources to convert PDFs to HTML, I think John might.
Yeah, so our team does not provide that at this time, but I'm sure as more and more people say, help, we got a lot of PDFs, what do we do? It is a very tedious manual process to remediate PDF documents. So there are services that you can hire, and you can just send out your PDF and it'll come back all pretty and remediated. Then you can also do a lot of the stuff yourself. Now, as far regarding AI tools, there are some companies that promise AI tools. Even, I believe, even Adobe, Adobe's uses AI as well. They also have an API that you can purchase to set up the system where you can just drop your PDFs into kind of a bucket, and then it'll automatically do some PDF tagging, and it'll use some AI to make some decisions that a human would need to make based on the visuals of the document, and then it'll code all that stuff up. So there's tools coming out, and I'm sure there's going to be more and more and more coming out as this April date approaches and all the states start sending messages up to managers.
So maybe we could follow up with them as that's in our AI accelerator and we're about to announce it coming up. So maybe
Yes.
we can send a note out about which tools that we will be helping with.
Absolutely.
We have a question from a deaf participant. Okay. Can I borrow your microphone for?
Of course.
Hi, my name is Dara Basil, and I work with DHHS. I work with the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Program Lead for the Division of Mental Health, Substance Use Services, and Developmental Disabilities. What I've noticed here in North Carolina is we have 1.3 million people with a hearing loss. So that means that for the state of North Carolina, we have thousands of deaf and hard of hearing, deafblind employees throughout the state. One of the things that I've noticed that when we have other agencies across, state agencies providing webinars, there's always an issue with them not knowing how to kind of make it accessible. And they think that captioning is accessible enough. But captioning is English, and a lot of people use American Sign Language as their first language. So we need that accommodation and accessibility to have sign language interpreters present in webinars. Many of the platforms are not accessible. WebEx is absolutely not accessible. Zoom, so far, has been the most accessible as far as like managing video tiles and et cetera. So what is the plan moving forward with how we can make sure that accessibility for deaf, hard of hearing, and deafblind employees in the state of North Carolina?
Awesome question.
Thank you.
Well, okay. Yeah, I'll take it. So right now, we are aware that Zoom is the most accessible. However, we are on Teams, but we are learning. Even with this conference, we have ASL interpreters. This is the first conference at the state that I'm aware of that has the interpreters here. So it is something that is on our radar. I'm not sure quite how yet we will address that, but it is.
I think this conference, being an accessibility conference, is about bringing awareness to our government. And the more that we can spread that awareness, the more people are going to start to be thinking about other people. And I agree. I've heard that Zoom is the better platform for meetings. It works well with live interpreters. So I think, yeah, just the more the word gets out, the more the need, the more voices, the more people fighting for other people, saying, hey, maybe we should use Zoom for our meeting, we have for our conference. I think that's a great suggestion.
Thank you for that question.
Can you explain ASL? Just say that ASL is not like a word-for-word interpretation.
Yeah, so she said,
Yeah, please.
American Sign Language, it's a language that relies on non-manual markers, body language, the use of your face, eyebrows, signs. English is a spoken language using your voice. So English is a linear language, where ASL does not translate word for word. It's more contextualized, meaning that there might not be a word that maybe have a one-to-one interpretation, so there may be some expansion that needs to be done to make that an equal interpretation. For example, with Spanish, it is a spoken language and something kind of similar. There's no word-for-word correlation between those two spoken languages.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please be careful.
Thank you.
I discovered that there is a state contract that has locked-in pricing for ASL translation and part services. You can't see the prices in the contract. You're not going to contact the vendors that are approved in that contract, but I do plan to follow up on that and see what the pricing would be to have those services, at the very least at our board of commissioners.
Thank you, Nicole.
Wonderful, thank you.
Good morning. My name
morning.
is Tim Atkinson. I'm with the North Carolina Credit Union Division. I've been working with Elizabeth and her team converting our website over to Digicoms. I have 3 separate questions, so bear with me. One revolves the WAG as it relations to Dubbot. The wagon, it states that your public-facing website should be at a 8th grade level reading. Is that correct?
The WAG?
Is that
Oh, okay.
I call it the WAG, not the WCAG.
That's fun. Okay, I've never heard that one.
So is that correct, if I remember correctly?
There's no official guideline yet that says it must be at a certain reading level.
Okay.
We do expect that to come out at WCAG 3.0, which
Okay.
is going to be still a couple years away. It's more of a usability,
Yeah.
so that everybody
Exactly.
can understand.
How would DubBot recognize that we need to change our language?
So, sorry, it was not on a second ago. I'll show you in the room where every single page in DubBot will tell you at what reading level the content sits. And I will tell you all, a lot of them are master's levels.
Oh, boy.
So that is, Ms. Piccioni, something I use AI for. If we find content that's at a master's level, I'll cut and paste it and put it in AI and say, can you please rewrite this at an 8th grade level or whatever? And it does work.
Okay. The second question is regarding PDFs. We currently have Adobe a license, and Adobe in itself has a check accessibility report. How does that relate to DubBot in their accessibility report?
So the DubBot report can tell you whether or not tags exist on your PDF, and then Adobe.
Yeah, well, while it can tell you tags exist,
Right.
that doesn't mean it's accessible. You still need human intervention to see, are the tags correct? Because if your document has a marked up header and it just marks it as bold, it's not going to let the user know that. So you want to double check that. You also want to make sure that if you use any kind of AI tool to do automated checking, that the alternative text on the images is correct. I'm sure you've all used PowerPoint, and it tries to be helpful and suggest image alt tags, and how many times has that been spot on? So right now, AI is still in that learning phase on, yeah, do you want to?
We're early. No, that's a great answer. Let me just quickly go back to the previous question, which was about the reading level. So there is a WCAG guideline. I just had to Google it. So it's a AAA level. WCAG SC 3.1.5. So, but that's a AAA guideline, and so the ADA from Title II says that states only have to go to up to the A and the AA success criterion. AAA is kind of above and beyond. Yeah, 2.1, A, and AA. AAA is above and beyond. But making your stuff readable for people with cognitive disabilities, if you can simplify it as much as possible, that's great.
But you're saying that's coming out in 3.0, is that correct?
No, so she mentioned WCAG 3. We have to test against WCAG 2.1. 3 is like way down the line.
Way down the line, okay. All right.
But what is the reading level for?
It doesn't say.
Oh, it doesn't say. Okay, sorry. I thought it was.
Lower, anyway, let's move on.
Okay. The third question is based off the previous lady's question. They were talking about Zoom. Is it still the standard, and I'm not sure if it's more of a question to the secretary than it is to this panel, is it still the standard that we cannot initiate Zoom because of security reasons? We can be a part of it, but not initiate it.
Not for us to
Secretary?
Yes, that is correct right now. We are reviewing it, as well as a couple of other platforms that does have other accessibility, and there's a meeting I'm having December 2nd on that very topic. So I can let y'all know after the meeting on December 2nd.
All right, thank you.
So
Great questions, Tim. Thank you.
Question.
I know.
Hi, I'm Hannah. I work in this building in the Division of Environmental Assistance and Customer Service. And my question is kind of like the strategy for having like wide, broad acknowledgement of this issue, because I'm the only one on my team. I mean, Madeline's here too, learning about these issues. but there's so many of us that have like Drupal editor access, and we're making new content all the time, and it's like no one else is remediating their PDFs and constantly putting stuff out there. So just wondering the strategy. I mean, I recently did the like web editor training, and there was like some mention of accessibility, but most of what I've been learning, like the PDF remediation, is like my own going out and finding it. So
Yeah. That's a great question, and I'm so glad that you took the web manager training. The reason why accessibility probably wasn't brought up a lot during the Drupal training for the platform is because it is accessible for the most part, and it is done for you. Kudos to you and your team member for taking on the PDF training. I wish this issue were more prevalent in our daily conversations with all agencies. We are doing our best by hosting this conference and putting out newsletters, and we write blogs on the Digital Commons site. I don't know if you have other things to mention, but we're trying to beat the drum and trying to make this much more top of mind for everyone. So I appreciate so much what you're doing, and I realize you feel like a lone soldier, but you're really not, because look around. You have, and we also have the accessibility community of practice. I'm sorry I didn't bring that up. Go ahead, Amy, sorry. Oh.
No, it's okay. I kind of blanking on what I was going to say. Oh, okay, yeah, our service. So spreading the awareness of accessibility, you're onto it. And I think sharing the link to this conference, the YouTube link, that's one way. Getting just information out to people, it's going to kind of be a grassroots effort at this time. We need more management and executives to get on board as well. But another thing about the Digital Commons platform is we don't police it. We don't control and limit what goes onto it. What goes onto it is your responsibility and your risk, what you put on there. But where we can help is that Amy and I started an accessibility support service where we can have a consultation with you, sit down, and help you kind of look through your PDF library and answer any kind of technical questions. We even offer accessibility testing of web content. That is where that's my favorite thing to do. So reach out to us. You can find us on ServiceNow.
okay,
Great
thanks.
questions, Hannah. Thank you.
I just kind of worry about like the 2026 deadline with. Yeah,
yes.
I'm like,
yes.
The rest of our team is not aware of that, but
it's coming.
thank you.
It is coming.
As the date approaches, more and more people will be made aware. How much more time do we have? We have about 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
I'll be quick then.
Sure.
My name is Jake Thompson. I'm a business analyst at NCVIT. Part of the thing that my team does is assist in putting together procurement documentation for various vendors that are maybe going to provide software to the state. Some of what we put together, we develop diagrams, right, in Microsoft Visio, so flowcharts and stuff like that. We produce written narratives to go alongside of that stuff to help increase accessibility on that front, but often we provide that in the diagrams themselves as PDFs. Is that the best practice? Because we're trying to produce something that's not editable, but so we don't want to send the original source file. What's the right way to do that beyond the written narrative that goes with it?
Okay, so let me make sure I understood. So you're saying you have PDF forms?
Not forms, diagrams, so like visual aids. Basically.
What was the word?
Visio.
Oh, diagrams in PDF form. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so anytime you can produce web content that loads in a browser, HTML-driven stuff is always going to be better, easier to maintain, easier to build, easier to make accessible.
Sure.
So I would highly encourage that. When you have a complex diagram, you can still provide all the meaning of that diagram in a web page.
Sure.
And it's easier to maintain. If you use PDFs and you put all this complicated information in the PDF, you have to make that PDF accessible. Then when that diagram changes, you have to go back and re-remediate the PDF.
So part of
and it's much easier to do to change the web page.
Right. Part of the issue is that it needs to not change. It
needs to not
be a
change.
static document.
Okay.
Right. It's part of a packet that goes out to a vendor, right? That in the past would have been literally mailed, and now we need to replicate that functionality as part of the procurement process.
Okay. Sure.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I think we're out of time.
I think that's time. Well,
Oh, yeah.
All right, so one more thing. See, this is why, I get to stay here with my lovely team. Y'all are rock stars. So one thing to tell you is I will make sure that we are bringing it up to every other cabinet secretary, that we are beating the drum every other week to make sure that the message is being heard, as well as we will be a little bit louder and prouder on some of our websites and some of our blogs and information to make sure the message is getting out to not only each of you, but the teams you support and the people you support, because I think it's that important. So as we go, we'll work back to ensuring that we are continuing to drive the message home, as we want all of North Carolina accessible to everyone, no matter the disability or no matter what it's going to take. So y'all had some incredible content that we can now take back to look at and get some more frequently asked questions back out. I will be again bringing it back up at our AI and Cyber Conference. If you got we cannot get in to that conference, please email me and Elisa, and we will get you in. I was just texting to get it opened back up again, as Nicole brought up that she couldn't get in, so I immediately got her back in. So let me know, and I'll get you back in. But that's where we'll also bring it up one more time there. So this team is going to have to be there with me. Aren't they fun? They're like, are you kidding? No, we're going to have fun together. I'll get you signed up.
We've just put our
We can
email
talk on the break.
addresses
We'll talk
up,
on the break.
and please, if we didn't get to your question, do email us. Thank you so much.
So
Thank you all.
mean, aren't I? Thank you. Amy, John, and Phoebe, that was amazing. I want to say right now, we have a fabulous presentation coming up about AI and accessibility, but I want to let you know, you heard Phoebe say a couple times, you can meet me back in the room. Earlier I mentioned we have a training room. If you go around the front desk, make the little U, so it's right back here. Amy, John, and Phoebe will be hanging out, or at least John and Phoebe will be hanging out back there. There are some stations back, so you can try a little accessibility things. We're going to have a break after this next presentation, but I want you to know that's available, and that's where they'll be if you have questions today. I want to say coming to the stage, it's not really a stage, but I've always wanted to say that, is going to be Donna Lewis, and she's going to talk to us about AI and accessibility.
Wow. I've been working in accessibility since 2001. I was first made aware of it. And I had that problem where I tried to tell all my colleagues about it. Sorry, I've been choking this morning. I've got one right here. And here's what I did. I yelled. How many people, if you've met me and spent any time with me, have not heard me say accessibility? So just keep hounding them, it's just that important. Also meet people that need it. Have real examples. That really makes a difference. So that being said, what I want to talk about today is using AI in accessibility. This is going to be huge, okay? This is Donna's opinion. This is not something that I have too much experience with as far as the AI community is. But about a year ago, I was at a Microsoft conference, and we were playing with Copilot. And this was before the state got Copilot. And I downloaded on my phone, personal Copilot, and I told Copilot when it gave me something that I did not like the results because I have ADHD and dyslexia, and I did not understand easily. Oh my goodness, every response Copilot has made from that point on has been bulleted lists, simplified text. It's totally taken the content and given it to me with my needs in mind. Okay? So I am not saying that we need to take the responsibility of AI from the content creator and put it all on the consumer of the content, but I am saying that in the future, it's got to go that way. It really does. So let's look at some examples of things in AI right now that are making a difference. So some of these are in the future, and some of them are already in production. All right, so we need to leverage these new technologies. And you know what? I didn't introduce myself. Donna Lewis. I work in enterprise architecture and innovation. I'm on the innovation team. So we spend a lot of time talking about what is possible and what technologies are out there. So there's three basic AIs: machine learning, natural language processing, and computer vision. Computer vision is also input and output of vision. We always have, and I don't have to tell you because you're here, you've come to listen to what is important, but AI and accessibility will be important because accessibility is important. Accessibility ensures that people with other abilities, I really try not to say disabilities, because I believe everybody has a superpower, and that superpower is attached to whatever they are. They're unique, and they have an ability that I don't have, and I just love that. So everybody has a superpower, but so it's important that we allow everybody to fully participate in our society. We are government. We don't have a choice. Could you imagine telling somebody, no, you can't come in our building? Do you remember that from the 1970s? We don't do that anymore. It empowers them to access their rights and to fully contribute. The combination of AI and accessibility opens new avenues for overcoming barriers. These individuals may face AI-driven solutions that can adapt to their unique needs. They mentioned Zoom, right? I have seen the technology where an AI-generated person is trying to do sign language, right? So that is something that they are pursuing right now because it is a problem. We do need translators, and especially in the government. Some of the things that we're seeing are vision enhancement tools, AI-driven solutions, such as smart glasses and special apps for your phone, right? They navigate the environment, access information by using real-time object recognition. I've seen this. This is pretty cool. Your phone says there's a white chair that's empty on the front row, right? It can interpret things around you and give you the information you need. The glasses now have displays in them, and the ear pieces are now getting the coaxial speakers, so you can hear through it as well. AI and mobility is a huge thing. It's really making a big difference on how we approach moving around. If you've not seen that green chair right there, or yellow chair, that is the Toyota Walk Me chair, and the video just came out a couple weeks ago. That thing is amazing. It's based on how goats and crabs walk, right? So they used AI, and it moves smoothly. It's like a Segway, right? So it's constantly keeping you balanced, but it can go over any kind of terrain. This is what they're using AI for. The sensors are looking at the environment around it and interpreting how it would proceed through it. So this is another example of how those AI capabilities are going to be put into everyday things that can make it easier. AI and communication tools. you know, it's making a huge difference in the efficiency of communicating between languages. It's making a huge difference of communicating in situations where you can't hear. I have a friend whose son was going to Japan, and I understand he learned quite a few terms, and you know, he was really interested in it, and all of his friends took Google Translate. And, you know, Google Translate took care of it for him. This is another example of AI in those communication tools. They also allow for people to have diverse teams that we didn't have before, right? So people with different languages, or even if they're first languages, you can be in a meeting and understand each other. I've seen Microsoft Teams translate someone speaking in Spanish into English for those that are in the meeting as well. So allowing that AI to continue enhancing the accessibility is important. Speech-to-text benefits, but also text-to-speech benefits. It can improve engagement. We all know in the government that our teams are stronger when they're diverse, right? Your teams are much better when you can allow those to be diverse. And these kind of technologies are allowing that to happen at a rapid rate. Has anybody else noticed how fast AI is moving? It kind of blows my mind. I've been working in technology since I was 10 years old, which was a couple years ago. My dad was a computer programmer for AT&T, so I had my first computer at 10 and started doing my math homework, and I thought I was cool, you know? But I have seen the technology, and every year we say, oh, that's moved so fast. AI is going to blow all that away. It's so fast. It's so beyond. Before you even know a technology's come out, it's already out. When you think about it, because I keep thinking, you know, what could I do? You know, there's got to be a way. No. Can't keep up with it. AI is a personal assistant. This one kind of hits home with me. The older I get, the harder it is to remember things. AI-powered memory aids and reminder systems assist individuals with memory impairments to manage daily tasks and appointments, facilitating greater autonomy, okay? I don't want to rely on my husband to remind me of things. I want an assistant that is silent and tells me to feed the dog. Learning and educational tools, I'm very excited about this. I hear a lot of comments about how AI is really going to interfere with education systems. And I think it's just time to change. I remember when word processors came out, they thought that was going to break, you know, the systems because, you know, it'd be good for secretaries, but nobody else will use Word, you know. So AI is going to change the way we have to teach. It's not the ability to do it anymore. It's the ability to understand it, to read it, to produce it, to know it's right. Smart home devices. I haven't seen it yet, but I know Google is now going to switch over to Gemini, and I hope it's soon because she says, I don't know how to answer that way too many times in my house. But having these personal assistants and smart devices in your home can help with things like learning disabilities, understanding the environment that the individuals' needs are, right? And you'll notice the theme is individuals, individuals, individuals. It's got to be for me, right? It's got to be for you. Things like how I learn versus how someone else learns needs to be taken into consideration. I love this one. There's a company called Facing Emotions. It's using AI and smartphone cameras to analyze facial expressions of a person in conversations and translate those emotions into short, simple sounds. How many times have you talked to your teenagers and they roll their eyes? Yes, Mom. Right? If you could not see them, would not understand that inference. So if I had a translator that could let me know their emotional state, that would be very helpful. I've worked with a lot of autistic students when I was a teacher, and they have special needs and they don't always understand why someone's laughing or if they're laughing, right? Are they being maniacal? Are they being, angry? Are they, think I'm stupid? Why are they laughing? So having a translation system using AI will help those individuals. AI innovations are improving healthcare accessibility, making services more efficient and tailored to individual needs. Last time I was at the doctor, she said, "Do you mind if I turn the AI system on?" This is for Duke, and they're doing all of their recordings of and putting it into AI notes into my chart. I said, "No, go ahead." I can't tell you how many times I've been at the doctor and I've had a problem, I've talked to her, she said, "Oh, I'll write you a prescription for that." And then I get out to the car and realize I don't have that prescription. So when she gets done, the AI outputs what she needs to do before she leaves the room. So I'm not forgotten. The individual is not a bother. The individual gets their needs met. Personalized health care. Right? Telemedicine. We think of telemedicine as being kind of convenient. If you're sick at home, you can talk to the doctor. What if you're someone that can't leave home? You can still go to the doctor with telemedicine. AI is enhancing these experiences for people. Remote diagnostics. AI technologies are enabling accurate remote diagnostics. Right? How many people have ever been misdiagnosed? Yeah. It was COVID. No, it wasn't COVID. It was, okay, AI is giving the ability of the healthcare expert to identify those things up front, to let them know that they may have made a mistake or that there is something that it has noticed that the doctor may not have noticed. Support for mobility restrictions are important as you move through healthcare when you have needs. The advancements in AI technologies that are going to make the biggest difference are the multi-AI assistants and that type of thing. So when I first started seeing AI a few years ago, this AI generated pictures. This AI generated text. This one was better at writing. This one was, no, multimodal communication will become what's important, right? It can do all of it. Copilot, I've had it do images, I've had it do text, I've had it write letters. It makes my report for my boss every week of what I accomplished. Look at my Outlook, look at my Teams meetings and all the notes I've taken this week, and give me a list of 10 things that I've accomplished this week so I can tell my boss. It always comes back and it says, your boss is Keith Briggs. And here's what you have accomplished. Edge and small language models are going to make a difference. Small language models are that I could have the entire AI on my device. I don't have to rely on it going to the cloud and coming back to accomplish something. I could have everything I need right here on my watch. I don't need my cell phone, right? We're talking small devices. Your device at home could become autonomous, right? It doesn't need to go to the internet. It already knows, right? Maybe every once in a while it goes out there, but it should already know. Agentic and embodied AI. This is going to be very interesting for us because this is going to be your personal AI advocate in your pocket. For me, I'm going to own it. It's going to be on my device, right? It's going to know how I need the world interpreted for me. When the doctor says it's halitosis, the app says it's bad breath, right? Because it knows I don't understand what halitosis is. So these agents will also be able to do common everyday things for me. I will give it a large command, right? Fill out this form for me, right? It'll be able to go out. It'll know my information. It'll belong to me. I don't have to worry about safety because this is my device. This is my information. This is not available to the rest of the world. Go out, fill out the form for me, and use whatever tools it needs to use in order to accomplish the overall task. That's really what the agentic AI is giving us. Enhance virtual reality, right? Presenting the world to us and using special devices, predictive analytics, and so many opportunities for all of us. Interpreting our needs, advocating across platforms, dynamically personalized, anticipating barriers, and evolving. Right now, one of the things we are working on is at DIT, and we started in the innovation department, it's kind of moving on up, but we're trying to figure out how can AI navigate websites for me, right? The content is on the website, right? And you guys are responsible for that content. And so we could move that responsibility to the AI and present it for me, for my personality, for what I need. And that's going to be, in my opinion, a huge thing. That's it. That's what I have. Does anybody have any questions? No questions? Okay. Well, I'm always around. Yes, ma'am. That's a tough one. Well, my sister and my husband and even my 80-year-old mother, I talk to them about AI all the time, and I showed them how to do prompts, and I'm excited about it, so I'm talking about it a lot. As far as the resources go, I hate that. I hate that it takes one whole bottle of water for me to look up something on Copilot. I hate that. Small language models could solve that problem for it. It would be here and not there. You know, what was the other part? Did I miss something?
I think just be mindful. I mean,
I agree.
I think we're a little different page about it, but I think I'm interested to hear more.
Yeah. And that's me. I just want to hear more. I want to know about it. I want to learn about it. I want to be the one that makes the first mistake so that I can tell you how not to make the mistake. Right? So, thank you. I appreciate your opinion, and I do like it when people don't agree, because it gives me something to think about. So, thanks.
So, did you have a question?
Did I miss one?
Would you mind going up to the mic?
Thank you.
Hello, me again.
Hey.
So I know AI is the topic of the day every day these days, and I do see a lot of research that says there's a huge potential for AI supporting accessibility.
Yes.
And definitely when I talk to vendors, they're pushing out their AI tools, and for only $10,000 more a year, you can add on our AI functionality. And then I go look at the disability advocacy websites, and they say, whoa, let's hold up. So much of accessibility is context-based, and maybe one day, but right now, AI can't necessarily look at alternative text on an image and tell you whether it's contextual or not. It might say this is a bag of groceries, but there's no context to why you're using that image on your webpage. So my question for you is there a place, or could you guys maybe consider creating a place where we could go and find a list of the AI accessibility tools and resources that are vetted, that are supported by the disability community, so that we're not just having to take a vendor's word for it and then finding out after the fact that it's not the magic pill that we thought it was.
And you're right. Everything I'm talking about, guys, is not tomorrow. It's not next year. It's not 5 years from now, probably. What I'm talking about is way in the future. And to get there, we need to be mindful now of the possibilities, because design doesn't just happen, right? Designing our systems in the future to understand what's coming is much better. I am a proponent for AI because I like AI, not because I think you need to use AI, right? And I think it would be great if we could come up with a list of resources. Maybe that would be an instance if you have one particular software where you could put in a request for Amy and her team and John to look at it and help you. I'm also a proponent for employee accessibility. My title has employee in it, so I'm really worried about what you guys are doing and how you guys are using it. And 70% of people in the office say they're using it to do their jobs now. Well, I want that to be safe. I don't want them doing it on the side. You need to have that, that talk up, right?
Can I follow up very quickly?
Sure.
All of these resources that you're offering, the website says they're available to state agencies. I'm with a county.
There's a conversation. Good point. Once I can scoot Donna off. Once I was saying the resource that Amy and John offer is on our website. So I'm not sure about counties, but if you contact them, they'll be able to let you know what is available. Or is it?
I have a resource.
Okay.
This is just a resource for you. So I'm Molly Hull. I'm with the North Carolina Museum of Art. And the Kennedy Arts Center, specifically the Leadership Exchange in Arts and Disability Conference, has like digital board, like boards that you can kind of email into, and they ask a lot of questions about AI and the disability community. So they would have some answers to your questions about how AI is being used, what is being approved, what's not being approved. That's a great resource for you. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, you're going to get a 5-minute break now. Again, please eat all the food, drink all the drink. And like I mentioned, so there are 4 interactive stations going on. Let me give you 1 minute. Please don't, I want you guys to hear what's going on. Assistive technology tools from DHHS. Gloria Jinks is here in the room. Phoebe, you already met Phoebe. She's doing the DubBot demo. April Durance is here from the Office of State Controller, and she's giving accessible training design tips. And John Cotter has a keyboard challenge back there and a screen reader that you can try out. So if you're not familiar with accessibility tools, you haven't seen what they look like, that's a good opportunity to do that. That will be going on continuously this afternoon. Also, the live feed, which I wanted to acknowledge that we have the live feed. Thank you guys for joining. Is also going on back there. So if you move out of this room to go do some of those, the live feed is still going on, so you'll still be able to hear the speakers here. And just be mindful when you move in and out. So we'll come back at, look at my actual, at 10:22 now. So please feel free to move about. for us. So I have to be the meanie. Okay. Great, thank you guys. That was very fast. Waiting for my okay. Good. Welcome back. Thank you. Next, we're going to have Katie Smith from DNCR talk about accessible by design, web governance that works for everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you so much while we all sit here and photosynthesize in the sun. I think we all feel good to get out of the office. So I'm Katie Smith, Assistant Marketing Director of the North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources. And I just want to go ahead and say thank you to the Digital Commons team for putting this together. I've worked with them for almost a decade now on a lot of different projects. And so I just want to say that I'm really excited that they picked this topic this year. One, because someone asked the question earlier, how do we get people to start understanding this? And as you talk about it, and you talk about it all the time, and you bring it up all the time, and you do exactly what we're doing today. So I want to thank y'all for being here today and being open to this conversation and engaging with it. And so today I'm going to talk a little about governance. Before I get started though, I want to share a little anecdotal story. In 2021, my ex-husband had a stroke at the age of 48. Now, nothing caused this stroke that we know of, no trauma. Basically, when we met with the doctor, she said, sometimes arteries just break and we don't know why. And the reason I bring this up is he was very healthy, had no medical issues, but he became disabled overnight. And anyone in this room could become disabled. His entire life changed. He learned to walk again, he learned to talk, and he's doing great now. He was unfortunately not able to go back to work, but helping him through this process, because we still have a great relationship, I realized how important accessibility is, especially if it comes to you overnight, right? Like, to learn to live in a world that basically has not been built for you is very difficult. And even though accessibility had always been something that was important to me, I realized in that moment how very important it is as us, civil servants and our agencies, to make sure that we are able to accommodate that. Now, one of the things that I'm going to talk a little bit about, but I want to share for why this is so important, is that we have to be the ones that are very vocal about this. A couple years ago, we were meeting with a vendor about a website. I started looking through it and I said, hey, there's serious issues with the color contrast on this website. And I made my concerns known. I said, this is not even passing basic accessibility guidelines. And I remember he said, but that's the brand colors. We want it to match the brand colors. And I wanted to be like, honey, I'm going to touch your arm while I tell you this. A pretty website is not a civil right. Accessibility is. That is what our job is to do, because that is something that's important. And the truth is we can get sued over it. And when people ask you, you start talking about lawsuits, it gets real serious real quick. Now, the other reason is we should do it because it's the right thing to do, right? And so how do we get there? And we get there through governance. So web governance is the structure that defines how websites are managed. It gives teams clear rules. It defines responsibilities, repeatable workflows, and the tools needed to monitor accessibility. When these pieces are in place, accessibility becomes intentional instead of reactive, and that's what we need to get to. Now, where does DNCR stand today? Every agency sits somewhere on what we call a maturity scale. Some are just getting started, some are at the very beginning, others have more coordinated process. Right now, DNCR is kind of in the define stage, where we have a clear direction, documented expectations, and a structure that supports consistency. So I've kind of put this model together. This is a mix of kind of some accessibility maturity models, but also where I see us in state government. So initial is where some of y'all might be right now. Accessibility is handled reactively and inconsistently. You don't know you have a problem till literally you get sued and legal says we have a problem, right? You don't want to be in that place. Developing, this is basic standards and tools in place, but inconsistent adoption. Someone mentioned that earlier. Not everybody's doing the same thing. Defined as there's a governance plan with roles, processes, and shared expectations, but I'll be honest, we still have issues, right? And we'll talk about why we have those issues. Manage is regular monitoring, reporting, training, and then optimized accessibility built into planning, procurement, and culture. Now, where do we stand today? We're kind of in the defined stage, right? Our digital strategy is really the accessibility. So I will say this, about 3 years ago, I met with our CIO, Amanda Richardson, and I said, we have a really big problem. Nobody knows what they're supposed to be doing digital-wise. It was all over the place. In 2015, our agency merged between nature and culture. We have over 100 sites, physical locations, dozens of websites, some on digital commons, some building their own custom websites. And there was literally no plan. And when the pandemic hit, we were in a serious pickle, y'all. We had laptops that didn't even have webcams, right? It was panic mode. And that's when I realized no one had really put together an actual digital strategy for our agency. So the CIO and I worked together, and one of the things that's in our digital strategy is accessibility is built into every digital part of what we do, okay? And so on this screen, you see a picture of a screenshot with a picture of someone pointing at a laptop, and it talks about our digital strategy. Now, from there, we built internal workflows, publishing expectations, and review processes that made accessibility part of our daily operations, and we strengthened cross-team collaboration between IT, marketing, and communications. And that's how we started having a conversation of how do we wrap this in to everything we're doing. So our digital strategy provided the direction, and our governance process operationalized it. Now, I think we all know these digital ecosystems are complex, to say the least, in state government. Large number of content editors and site owners, frequent turnover and shifting roles, competing priorities and limiting time, varying levels of accessibility, knowledge, complex multi-site environments. This complexity makes accessibility difficult without a strong governance process. And this has been a really big issue for us because we have, unfortunately, some high turnover in some areas. And so we'll get a web manager trained, then that person leaves, and another person comes in, and no one knows how this content got on the website. They don't know why the content's there. So there's been a lot of conversations happening back and forth, and a lot of this is just really keeping those communication lines open. Now, this is where governance helps. It gives everyone a shared framework. It defines roles and responsibilities. It creates guardrails and keeps accessibility consistent even when staff change. So when we're talking about governance and how that supports accessibility, we're talking about a clear shared framework. Everybody knows what is that. You probably have heard roadmap a lot today. That's because roadmaps are very, very important. People need guidance. If you just say make it accessible, they literally are going to look at you like, what are you talking about? Because they really don't know what that means. So you have to have a clear roadmap. Define roles, responsibilities, and accountability. When someone becomes a web manager, just as if they become a social media manager or whatever else, I say these are your responsibilities. You have taken on this role. This is what the expectations are. Those guardrails keep accessibility on track across divisions and consistent expectations even when staff change. It shows agencies are committed to accessible digital services because governance connects people, processes, and technology under one shared standard, right? That's one of the biggest things is sometimes there's not clear expectations, people aren't sure of the goal, and so we want to make sure that that's rooted in everything we do, our digital strategy, our strategic plan, our procurement. Accessibility is always part of that. Now, what does governance mean in practice? Well, who is responsible for accessibility at each stage? What standards must all sites follow? How new content redesigns and migrations are approved, and how accessibility is monitored and reported, and how issues are prioritized and fixed. This puts structure around every part of the web lifecycle. What I find a lot of times when I meet with folks is they're not even thinking that far ahead. They're just thinking, we need to get a website. We need to get a website up. And they're not thinking about even what that content is. They're just like, we got to get something up for people to look at and go to. And so we want to make sure that we have this governance and process to be able to refer back to and go, this is how we do this. So how do we do it at DNCR? The first thing is division web managers have with clear authority. So a lot of times we'll have folks who want to do something to their website and they'll say, well, my web manager said that I couldn't do this. And I'll say, well, that's correct. You can't. And the web manager is the person you have to refer to because they have the training, the knowledge, and the understanding, right? We also had a strong partnership, or continue to have a strong partnership with our CIO. So one of the things that we started doing is working very closely with them on RFQs. Where we saw a lot of breakdown is that no one from marketing communications was part of any website vendor RFQs, which led to literal websites being built, launched, that did not meet accessibility. And it was a huge issue because no one was at the table to say, hey, here are all the things we've learned. I have went through dozens of new website builds, migrations, and I can tell you probably right now 10 things that I see as issues all the time. No one asked those questions, right? So part of this new process that we built was anytime any kind of web tool, website came to our CIO to put out for a vendor, she was like, can you please review this and let me know if there's anything we're missing? And there were things that were missing, things that should have been assessed, things that should be included. We also put me down as a person for the vendor to talk to. So recently, one of our sites is getting a new museum. They picked the vendors through the whole RFQ procurement process, and they interviewed me, and they asked me questions, and they said, you've brought up a lot of points that up to this point no one has mentioned. And that's because my insight is so broad. I've seen all different types of websites with different use cases that accessibility can really be different depending on who your audience is, right? And so it was really important that we be part of that process. And then one of the things, and those who are in this meeting know, I talk about accessibility in every one of our meetings. We have monthly marketing communications meetings. Accessibility is always brought up because people will forget about it. They won't think about it. It's not always at the forefront of the conversation. And so anytime they're talking about a new marketing campaign, a new website, anything with communication, a form, a survey tool, I'm like, accessibility, accessibility. If I see something, we have a group chat, I pop in the chat and say, hey, I noticed a lot of y'all are using Unicode to do this. Please don't do this. It's not accessible. And so these are the types of things that you just have to keep having a conversation. And people's behaviors have changed. We have gotten so much better. Now we add alt text to things. People are doing so much better the way that they create graphics and what they put on their website. And that's because we always have it be part of the conversation. The other thing that we started doing is what we call a content-first process. So when someone comes to us and says, I want to build a new landing page or a new website, or I need to migrate a website, I always ask them these questions first. What content users need? So like what are the things that they're going to be accessing? Who is the audience? How the information should be structured? And what task people want to complete? And what format best communicates the information? So you decide the content before you decide anything. And that is so important in what we do. And so I'm going to give you a great kind of case study and example of this. So we have one of our divisions, the Historic Preservation Office. They originally had their own website years ago. It was very, very outdated. I'm pretty sure it was built on like Macromedia Dreamweaver. I mean, nobody could update it anymore. It was a mess. And so we said, look, we're not sure what we're going to do now. We're going to migrate it into the DNCR website and we'll reassess. Well, it actually ended up being a great thing. Because it got migrated into the DNCR website, I was immediately able to see there was some serious issues with the content. First of all, everything was presented in PDFs, everything. They had 5,000 PDFs. It was wild. Part of this was because a lot of the work they do involves a lot of surveys, reports, but a lot of this content really shouldn't have been PDFs. They also had the highest, I mean, when I say our inbox every day was filled with questions like, how do I get my house on the National Register? How do I do this? How do I do that? I can't find this. And so I started realizing pretty quickly this process of how they were sharing information with the public was not working for anyone, right? And so when they decided we're going to pull that content out of our website and build their own website, the first thing I did was I sat down with them And I said, all right, real talk. We got to talk about these PDFs. We got to talk about how this information is presented. A lot of this written in so much jargon, nothing's bulleted, and I was really nice about it, y'all. But I was like, hey, this is why. And I showed them evidence. And that's really important when you go to people like this. You can't just say, hey, this needs to be accessible, or you need to do this. I said, look, I'm going to show you, and I literally put a deck together. And I presented not to the whole team, but each division, because each division's constituents were very different. What they needed, their audiences were very different. And I said, here is your web analytics. Here is the drop-off rates. Here is the hundreds of emails we've gotten to our contact us where people can't find information, and this is what I propose. And so we sat down and I said, this is what we're gonna do. Let's figure out what things have to stay reports, what things can become HTML, and would you be open to me helping rewrite some of this content so that it is more manageable to consume, not just straight 8 paragraphs of text. And they were very open about it and very appreciative. But they didn't realize it was a problem. They really didn't realize it was a problem. And so one of the things we did for the new website is the first thing we did is we went through and said, can we convert some of these things, like how do I put an application in for my house to be part of the National Register? That literally was just a PDF. There was no website page for this. You had to literally open the PDF, download it, or just zoom in on it to read it. So we converted that to a web page. We looked through what were the top 5 things that people asked the most questions about. We converted all of that to HTML. And then the other thing we did was I said, there has to be consistency across your website. So let's make sure, one, that all of this stuff is accessible, but also if they go to environmental review or they go to National Registry, the format is similar so everybody knows what to expect when they get to those pages, because that was a big issue. The landing pages they had were so out of it, and you couldn't tell where to find things. So we created a structured template, and I said, this is the template we're going to use for each of the units in HPO. So we have a carousel, we have 5 call to actions that are the main questions people are asking, we have a quick links with resources, and then we have something at the bottom that they want to spotlight, a map system, whatever. And we realized, and I'm not joking, the contact us went down almost 70%. They went from getting literally dozens of emails a day to maybe 1 or 2 of not being able to find stuff. And that was because PDFs didn't work, a lot of the stuff wasn't accessible, and it wasn't just not accessible to people who needed accessibility things, it was not accessible to anyone. I personally would get so frustrated when I was trying to find stuff on their website. I did learn a lot about hand-hewn nails, though. I will say I know a lot more about historic preservation than I thought, because I had to comb through all of that content. And I'll say this takes time. It takes time, it takes effort, it's understanding the content. So I set up a system of meeting with them. We went through the process. I basically said, hey, here's some prompts. Let's see if we can find this information easily. And it worked out, and they have a great website now. And it takes work, and they're continuing to work, and we got to do all the PDF remediation. But this is a great example of how part of our governance process now is when we meet with folks, but when they request a website, it goes to me first, and then I have a conversation with them. We figure out what their needs are, and then we say, how can we take the existing content or new content and make it accessible? And we train them on that. I have trainings with them and say, here's what you need to do once you become web manager. Now, when we talk about governance, that covers across a lot of things, not just websites. So that includes web applications, PDFs, forms and workflows, media, social content, and third-party platforms. And that's one thing to think about with this Title II ADA is that it's not just websites. This covers social media. It covers a lot of the digital things that we present to the public. Now, when you start thinking about your governance, you're going to have a roadmap, and so you want to make sure that it's a plan that can be long-term. So you want to set clear milestones, such as policy updates. If you want to have your own template styles within your website, website reviews, quarterly reviews, and specific priorities and resource needs. So again, every month at our marketing communications, I say, hey, this is our accessibility thing of the month. This is what everybody needs to focus on. Here's your Dubbot report. We need to fix those broken links. This is an issue. We got to fix this. And I'm just very transparent and open about it. So you want to make sure that you have some type of either policy adoption, digital strategy, something to work from that everybody unifies around. You want to have template and component updates. So again, kind of have a structure, because it can get overwhelming when you go in digital comments and you're like, should this be a band? Should this be this? Should be that? But what you want is consistency across your website so that they know when they go to these site pages, this is how things are going to be structured. PDF remediation goals, a new site review process, and quarterly reporting. You also want to have a realistic roadmap. So you want timelines of how you're going to do these things. You want to prioritize what's the most important, and then obviously resource planning. And again, I will say this wasn't an easy process for us. It took years, and it took a lot of conversations and understanding about what does this look like for our agency. You also want to have a central reporting framework. So for us, we do monthly reports. My director shares that at the leadership meetings. We continue to communicate with kind of what I would call our communities of practice within our agency and make sure that everybody's on the same page of what are the expectations. And so that I think has been the biggest thing, is also people who've had learned experiences sharing like, hey, this is how we learned from this situation we recently had, for example. And then you want to obviously monitor it. So we have scheduled audits. So again, I usually run audits quarterly. I let folks know where they are. I work with their web managers, or in some cases, they even send it to their vendor, their vendor reaches out to me directly and says, what do we need to fix? We do frequent check-ins. We want to make sure this is habit building, so making sure that everybody, this is just part of what we do when we are putting information together. And then consistent onboarding for content creators and managers. So for us, the goal is stability and continuity and not one-time fixes. That's the thing we got to get away from. So we created clear guidelines. So simple, clear standards, example of accessible content. What I learned a lot of is not 8 pages of paragraph, do this, not that. That's what people say. What do you need me to do? What do you need me not to do? So the pre-built components, so that again, with our HPO, figuring out what do each of these divisional landing pages look like, how do we streamline this, and then shared language for talking about accessibility. So this turned it into a daily practice for us. So how did we do this? Well, it started with building out our SharePoint. So we built what we call our digital media guide. Everyone that's onboarded accesses this on our intranet. They book a session with me. I walk them through it. This has our website and social media basics, policies, resources. We talk through what is the expectations as a social media manager, a web manager, what you're going to be expected to do. And then we also have a digital accessibility section as part of that people can access, that has resources, updates on Title II, new things. I post all the stuff that DIT sends us there, as well as any webinars or trainings that we have. And so this has been a great tool to send folks. So when they come on, I send them a welcome email that has links to everything. They book a session with me. We talk for about 30 minutes to an hour. We walk through all of the basic things. And then I'm like, hey, I'm here. If you run into issues, message me. So for us, all our web projects start with a content and audience review. Then we talk about accessibility and design planning. Then we go to drafting and structural reviews. And then we do a governance accessibility review. So who's going to be responsible for stuff on your website? We publish it, and then we monitor it, okay? So this is an important workflow that we established that has helped us kind of maintain that roadmap that we talked about. So it keeps it embedded in everything that we do. So lessons learned and what comes next. Accessibility approves when built into the design process. So that, again, is making sure that we are explaining to folks, like, why is this important and why do we want to maintain these standards? Governance unifies decentralized teams, simple, clear expectations, and tools and training empower staff at every level. So for us, we're going to continue to work more on our reporting. We want to create more of a dashboard. We actually submitted something to the AI Accelerator that's going to help us do this. So we are going to try to look at how we can streamline this. Expanded guidance on content structure and readability. One of the biggest things we've run into is as discussed, I actually come from the museum world, and one of the things we learn when you're writing exhibits, most people read at a 5th grade level. So if you're writing something on a website, even though you might have jargon, you really have to break it down. And so that's something that we're struggling with a lot of our sites that are more, I think, academic leaning, is when do we use this types of language. So really working with folks on that. And then continued improvement through collaboration and monitoring. So how do y'all get started? First is identify your website users and define their responsibilities. One of the things I have to do regularly is clean up our website. Who has access to what is their section they're responsible for, following up with them, saying, hey, I noticed this hasn't been updated in a while. Do you want to talk about it? Or maybe some things that we can improve on it. Create a shared accessibility hub. So I showed you how we built that on our SharePoint. Add accessibility checks to publishing workflows, just making sure that everyone is going through a checklist of, hey, here are all the things we need before our landing page gets launched. Use Dubbot. Dubbot's great. I'll get in there. Honestly, sometimes when I just need something monotonous to do, I just fix broken links, so I don't have to really think. You know, I've been in a meetings for hours. It's a great little visual melatonin. Discuss accessibility monthly to build habits and awareness. Bring it up all the time. Talk about it all the time. Talk about things you saw that you thought were great, new tools, reminders, you know. It's important that it be part of the conversation. So thank y'all so much for your time today. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Gosh, isn't all this so good? I'm kind of wanting to take notes myself. Next, we have John Cotter coming back. You met him earlier on the panel. He's going to talk about accessible web development and test it with a keyboard. So I want you to look out. There's going to be a Vanna moment, so be looking for that.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you. Okay. Morning, everyone. So a web page is like a glass of milk. Before you take a sip, you can take a sniff, right? And that smell gives you a clue about how the milk is going to taste, right? And you can do a smell test on your web page as well, an accessibility smell test. In 10 seconds, with one simple tool, a tool you already have, you can get a sense of how accessible your web page is going to be. And that simple tool is a keyboard. So I'm John Cotter. I help North Carolina achieve digital accessibility compliance through teaching and testing. And I've been in web development for 22 years, and I specialize in web accessibility. So accessibility, it starts with one person thinking about another person. Can a person who uses a keyboard to navigate a web page use the thing I'm building? And so from one developer to another, this is why I think that testing with a keyboard is the most important thing you can do as a web developer for accessibility. It's the best bang for your buck, or maybe your bull. So when you test with a keyboard, you're helping a lot of people. According to the American Foundation for the Blind, they estimate that over 240,000 North Carolinians have some form of vision disability. And that number does not even include people who use a keyboard because of a mobility disability, right? They can't use a mouse, so they use a keyboard to navigate. So I looked through all the WCAG guidelines, and I found 14 that are keyboard related. So that's 28% of the WCAG 2.1 AA success criterion are keyboard related. 28%. Now, automated accessibility scanners, they find a lot, but they just can't find everything. They're great, though. I use one. But the interactive stuff, like the stuff that you interact with the keyboard, a lot of that stuff gets skipped by these accessibility scanners. And in 2025, AI it's on its way to getting there, but today it's not there. It still needs a human to test your interactive content. And so if I haven't already convinced you that testing with the keyboard is the right thing to do, then I'll just go to my last resort, which is it's the law. You have to do it. That's what ADA and Section 508 are about. So find the keyboard issues before your users do, early, right? Before you publish, before you release to production. And to prove how big of an impact you're going to make, I actually had a package shipped here, and Liz is going to bring my package in, to put something visual in your mind about how big of an impact you're going to make on accessibility. Oh, I got this giant 6-foot keyboard to help you remember how important testing with the keyboard is for accessibility. Everybody convinced? I record that in your core memories. Put it here. Okay, so let's talk about how. How do you test with the keyboard? So these are the keys you're going to use right here when you're testing with the keyboard. Let's go through them. So the tab key, that's the primary way that a keyboard user navigates through an interface. When they hit that tab key, they stop at all the interactive elements. And when they get to an interactive element, they're going to use spacebar and enter to activate the control. Activate the button, activate the link, follow the link. The arrow keys are used for changing selections within some controls, like drop-downs and menus and things. And then the escape key is used to dismiss or close things. So these are the primary keys that you need to use when you're testing with the keyboard. If you're testing with the mouse, you got one, click. Right, but when you're testing with the keyboard, this is what you want to use. So congrats on passing Keyboard 101. Now, so let's talk about the three things that here's what you need to pay attention to when you're testing with the keyboard. Visual focus, focus order, and keyboard equivalence, okay? So number one, visual focus. Keyboard users need to see the focus. And when I say keyboard user, I don't necessarily mean blind. I don't necessarily mean, when I say keyboard user, that doesn't mean they have a vision disability. Some people might use a keyboard just because using a mouse is hard for them because of their disability. And they find that using a keyboard is easier. And so when they're moving focus through the page, they need to know where focus is at all times on all these interactive elements. So this is an example of the visual indication of focus. Here's 3 buttons. And that second button has a black outline. And it's real easy to tell that that's the button that has focus, right? Very easy to tell that the visual indication of focus is on this button here. And if I want to activate that button, I'm going to press spacebar or enter. This is a video of me tabbing through the NC.gov website. And as I tab through the page with the keyboard, you can see that focus moving. Right now it's going through the menus, and it's going to get to the search box and the search button. So it's that visual indication of focus. I can see it at all times as I'm tabbing through. As a mouse user, you can kind of just jump right to the middle, right? If you wanted to search, you just click in there and jump through. But when you're using a keyboard, you need to tab through all the elements to get to the thing that you want to interact with. So non-interactive things should not be in the keyboard tab order, right? Non-interactive things like headings, blocks of text, images that are decorative, and other hidden content. All this stuff, if you put this stuff in the keyboard tab order, you're actually slowing down keyboard users. They don't want to stop on these things. When they're tabbing through, they just want to get to the stuff that they can interact with. Now, you should also make the focus visually obvious with high contrast. And here's a little cow drawing your attention here. I have a milk theme, if you didn't notice. So make the focus visually obvious. So what good is the focus when you can't really see it so well, right? So here's an example of that. I got 4 buttons, and as the focus moves through these buttons, as I'm tabbing through these buttons, when the focus is on this black button and this dark blue button, It's really hard to see that focus, right? Probably with this glare in this room, it's probably even more difficult to see. But with the lighter background color buttons and a black outline, it's easy to see that. That's because they have a high contrast. So in WCAG 2.1, they added this guideline that actually gave you a number to target, a magic number. User interface components must have a contrast of at least 3:1 with adjacent colors, colors that touch. So this outline, this black outline, when you measure that against the background color of the button, those adjacent touching colors, you're going to use a contrast testing tool to test that. And when I tested this dark blue and the black, I got 1.6:1. So that's below that 3:1 required contrast. But with the lighter button, it measured 4.6:1. And that's why it's so much easier to see that visual indication of focus. Okay, don't be scared. I'm showing you some code. I'm going to go show a little bit of code today. This is a presentation for developers. I'm not going to show a lot of code, but here's a little bit. So developers, this is how you should be coding the focus. You're going to use this pseudo class called focus-visible. That tells the browser when this element gets focus, here's the styles I want to apply. And the style you're going to apply is that you're going to use the outline property and the value auto. So what this outline auto does, it does an awesome thing. It's kind of magical. In the Chrome browser, when you say outline auto, it says, hey browser, it's up to you how you style this. Just make it work, make it accessible. And the Chrome browser does an awesome thing, and it actually displays a black and white outline at the same time. So when the focus is on a button that's on a white background, you see the black outline. But when the button's on a black outline, you see the white outline. So it's never gonna be a problem. So this is a great solution that I encourage you to use for styling the visual indication of focus. All right, so the second thing you need to test with a keyboard is the focus order. Focus should move in an order that makes sense. Don't trap your user like this cow here stuck in this maze. The keyboard focus should move in an order that makes sense. And here's what I mean by that. Let's say you're faced with a paper form like this. Okay, how are you guys going to fill this form out? On paper, pen and paper. You're going to go first name, last name, email. Everybody's nodding their head. First name, last name, email. That's the way that makes sense, right? Now, if you were tabbing through a web form like this and the focus went first name, email, if you're a user who can't see and your screen reader says first name, email, your first thought is, what happened to last name? And then you shift tab backwards and you get back to the first name and you said, oh, I don't hear the last name. And then you tab forward and now you've wasted time and you start to lose trust in the accessibility of this website, right? You're actually losing your users' trust when you're not thinking about them and the way the user navigates a keyboard. So the way that I like to think about tab order is it's like an elevator, okay? Like this cow waiting for this elevator. So you're in the top of the elevator on the roof and you're going to the basement. And it's very linear, this tab order. As you hit tab, you're just going through down every floor, stopping on interactive elements. That's what it's like, an elevator. So developers, this is how you are going to control the tab order. You're going to let the code order control the tab order, okay? Let the code order control the tab order. So what I mean by that is, if you're testing with the keyboard and all of a sudden the tab order starts going wonky, the way to fix it is to move your code around. And so in my example here, I have, I'm just moving the email text box below the last name, and that is fixing the tab order problem. Now sometimes when you do this, when you start messing with your code tab order, you start to mess with the styles on the page a little bit, and things might get kind of messed up with that, and then you might have to go back and change the styles. But this is the way to do it, and it's another reason why you should be testing accessibility early in your process. If you wait till the end, you've got a lot more cleanup work to do, right? If you're like, okay, we're going to production tomorrow, let's send this thing off to Amy and John to test with their accessibility testing service. No, we're going to find issues and we're going to point them out, and it's not going to go well. So testing early with a keyboard is good. Here's another thing. Don't let keyboard users, don't let the focus get trapped, right? So a keyboard trap, does anybody know what a keyboard trap is? A keyboard trap is like when you're tabbing through a page and you're kind of stuck in a certain part of the page and you can't tab past it, or it's just you're trapped. Your focus is trapped. And as a mouse user, you won't find these things. But when you're testing with the keyboard, if you find a keyboard trap, you will definitely come upon it. Now, I actually have a story. I was meeting with this developer named Loon, and she's an NC developer, and she inherited this legacy application, very legacy. That's the term. That means old. And almost embarrassing code, how old it is. So she inherited this code, and she was testing with the keyboard. I was like, yay. So she came to me, and she said, whenever focus got to this certain text box, focus would just kind of disappear. And so I said, okay, interesting. And it happened every time. So I said, okay, what's going on with this text box? She said, the text box is supposed to be read-only. You're not supposed to be able to edit it. You can't type in it. It's like a read-only field. But the developer didn't use the read-only attribute. What they did was they set the on-focus attribute and they called blur. Okay, if there's developers in the room, they'd be laughing. So when you use the on-focus function and you call blur, what's happening is you're just saying, okay, focus, get out of here. And so that works for a mouse user if you think about it, for a read-only field. The moment you click in that field, that on-focus event fires, it calls the blur, the focus leaves the field. And so that makes the text box read-only, right? But if you're a keyboard user, guess what? That's a keyboard trap, because you're going to be tabbing. The moment focus gets on that field, it blurs away, and it's gone. And you just can never get past that field. That's a keyboard trap. So don't let the focus disappear. That was kind of the same thing that was happening in that keyboard issue. It was like, was it really disappearing? Could I not see it? Was the code, the styling bad? And sometimes it's very difficult to tell. So I have a super secret bonus tip. This is my industry secret. I kind of don't want to let this out because it's kind of protecting my career as an accessibility tester. So what you're going to do, developers, is create a live expression to watch this thing called document.activeElement, and then move the focus. So here's a demonstration of what this looks like. Here's how you set it up. In DevTools, go to console, create a live expression. That's that little eyeball icon. And then the live expression you're going to watch is document.activeElement. So document.activeElement, it's a JavaScript thing, and it tells you what element has focus at any given moment. Is that making sense? So at any given moment, you're gonna be able to watch what is the value of document.activeElement. And in my video here, I tabbed through all the elements on the page, and document.activeElement is constantly changing, telling me the value. And so in that problem with Loon and her text box, the moment that focus left that text box, we looked at document.activeElement. And guess where it was going? To the body. Because that's what blur does. Blur sends focus to the body. So this is a great technique on how to troubleshoot focus issues. If you didn't follow along with that, that's okay. Go back and watch the video. We're going to post it online. Okay, the third thing you need to think about when you're testing with a keyboard is keyboard equivalence. Keyboard equivalence. And here's what I mean by that. Do it with a mouse, and now do it with a keyboard. Can you? Right? If there's a mouse way to do it, is there a keyboard way to do it also? And so here's 3 examples of common design patterns that often have this type of issue. Drag and drops, tooltips, and dialogues. So I think a lot of us have seen this drag and drop interface where you have a box with some items in it, and you have another box beside that, and then to make selections, you're moving an item into the other box, dragging and dropping, right? Dragging and dropping. And that's a very intuitive gesture for somebody with hands. Put something over here, take something over here, put it over here. Very intuitive, right? But how does a keyboard user do that, right? Remember what I said earlier. Accessibility is one person. It starts with one person thinking about another person. Can a person who uses a keyboard use the thing that I'm building? So if I'm building a drag and drop, I'm going to test it with a keyboard, and you'll find out whether you can do it or not. Now, the solution that I've seen a lot to these drag and drops is it's probably clicking in your mind right now too. Buttons in the middle, and so you click, you make your selection, and then you push the button, and it goes over here. And then as long as your keyboard can navigate to the items and the buttons, make selections with the keyboard, then that works. And accessibility, a lot of times, the problems that you solve for one group of people can solve problems for another group of people. So if you think about, well, what about a user who does use a mouse, but they have trouble using the mouse? Maybe they have a dexterity issue, but the world is just made for mouse users, so they just kind of like it. They can kind of get by, but they might not have the ability to kind of click, hold, drag, release with the mouse. That's a pretty complicated gesture. And WCAG even has a guideline that says if you're doing stuff like that, you need to have a simplified way of letting those things work. And so now that you added buttons in the middle, it's just clicks, right? Click on the thing, click on the button, click on the thing, click on the button. So now tooltips is another one. Tooltips is a very mouse user thing, Tooltips are often triggered by hover. It's so mouse focused. And so then when you're one person thinking about another person, how does a keyboard user trigger that tooltip? Is it going to appear on focus? Is it going to appear when I activate the trigger? And if there's important information in that tooltip, how's that user going to see that information? How's the screen reader user going to hear that information? Now, me personally, I try to avoid tooltips. I think that sometimes interfaces that have a lot of tooltips are kind of a hint that the interface is not so intuitive. And some designer said, well, our users aren't figuring it out. Throw a bunch of question marks with tooltips in there. I try to avoid tooltips when I can. Dialogues is another big one that is a common design pattern that I often forget about keyboard users. So when a dialogue pops up, it's often unexpected, isn't it? It's like you press a button and you're submitting your form and it says like, are you sure you want to delete? Are you sure you want to navigate away? These dialogues that force decisions. And so when that dialogue pops up, does it receive focus? Or does focus stay trapped in the background of the page? If a mouse user can't get to that background of the page while the dialogue is up, a keyboard user shouldn't be able to either. So these are just three kind of more complex design patterns. Now here's a little bit more code and an even simpler control. This, believe it or not, is a mouse-only button. It only works for mouse users or touchscreen users. And the way it's been coded, the reason is because the way it's been coded using a div tag, and there's a JavaScript event called onClick that fires some logic. So when you click on this div, that JavaScript event fires, and it works. It works great for a mouse user. But div is a container element. It doesn't have the semantics that a button tag would. So if a developer builds a button like this, it's not going to work for keyboard users, and when you're testing with the keyboard, you're going to discover that focus is going to totally skip this thing. So here's what you have to do to fix this. I'm not going to go into deep. I just want you to experience the complication a little bit. So in order to fix this, you got to add a lot of extra code. You got to add the tab index attribute. You got to add a role to tell the screen reader what is this thing actually? Is it actually a button? Is it a link? I don't know. And then you got to listen for the keyboard events with that on key up. So it's all this extra code that you have to add yourself. And why? Why? You just could have used the button tag. The button is naturally in the tab order. And when it actually naturally listens for keyboard events and fires click events. And then the button provides the semantics to the screen reader user. So this is kind of a funny slide that relates to that. So you might have heard people say no ARIA is better than bad ARIA. And I totally think that's true. So if you don't know what ARIA is a way to kind of extend HTML and add additional accessibility stuff. But it also provides things that HTML already provides. And a lot of times developers build these complex things where they using ARIA, but they could have just used native HTML. So native HTML, it's like a soft serve ice cream cone. And when you want something cold and sweet, it just does the job, right? But it's cheap. It's cheap. But Aria is like an ice cream sundae gourmet and a waffle bowl with drizzled chocolate syrup and cookie sticks and sprinkles and mint and fruit. Very expensive, very expensive. Good, delicious, awesome, but very expensive. So I like to weigh the cost of these things. When you're writing your HTML, stick to native HTML, and it's going to cost you way less. If you start writing Aria, suddenly you need to become an expert, or you need to go find one. You need to come to me, or Amy. So yeah, you really need to learn the Aria specs and get in, and it's just expensive. It's a lot more work. Sometimes native HTML does the job. Now, if you are into building custom things, and you want to build really cool, custom, awesome, accessible, complex things, I love this website right here. This is the one resource I'm going to give you. Aria Authoring Practices Guide. So go Google that. Aria Authoring Practices Guide. And I'm going to press play here. It's going to scroll down the page. It gives you code and working examples and the keyboard keys that work with all these different types of complex controls: combo box, modal dialog, grid, menus, menu buttons, just all kinds of more complex stuff. Tabs, a tab structure is another one. There's no native equivalent of a tab. I don't know if you know, there's no native HTML equivalent to a tab. It's just buttons. But you can build a complex tab structure using Aria. So anyway, I love this website, and when developers come to me and they say, hey, we built this thing, or maybe somebody built this thing for us, can you test it? How accessible is it? Well, first I'd say, yeah, go try it yourself with the keyboard. But then when I'm ready to test it, I'm going to test it with the keyboard. I'm going to use an automated testing tool, and I'm going to use a screen reader, and I'm going to get into the code. And then when I start to figure out what's wrong with it and start to offer remediation, how do we make this better? How do we make this more accessible? I like to look at this website and compare and say, okay, how did this website do it? And what can we take from this website? This website has a lot of credibility because it's made by the W3C. It's an authority. So W3C, those are the people who made the web standards, the people who made WCAG and Aria. So thank you for thinking about your users with a disability. And if you don't remember anything I've said today, just remember that you're not done developing until you've tested with the keyboard. So try it today. When you guys go get back to your desk, go to some website you made, see if you can navigate it with the keyboard. Thank you. I'm John Cotter. Questions? Yeah, we can take some questions if there is any. Sure. And thank you, Vanna, for bringing them. Okay, Nicole. Mm-hmm.
Question.
I'll try to answer simply then.
Okay, one of your first slides said, do not include headers and paragraph text in your tab order.
Mm-hmm.
So I had thought that a screen reader, which is a tool that reads audibly the content of a website to a blind person, I thought a screen reader read using the tab order. And so if you exclude your headers and your paragraph text from the tab order, how does a screen reader know how and when to convey that content to the
I love that you asked that question because I can answer that. So a screen reader user, and thank you, Nicole. So the question is, how does a screen reader user, wouldn't they want headings and things like that in the tab order? How can they read it, basically? So when a screen reader user, they use a keyboard to navigate, for the most part, but their screen reader also lets them read line by line. I kind of glossed over that in my presentation, but so a screen reader user can jump to heading. They can press the H key. Over in this room over here, we have a screen reader that you can demo out. And so they can press the H key with their screen reader running and jump to headings. They can press some other keys to jump to different types of elements. And so when a screen reader user is kind of browsing a web page, like the first time a screen reader user comes to a web page, Well, first of all, let me back up. The first time you come to a web page, what are you attracted to? What do you see? You see the headings. You see the big, bold text. And so that's what a screen reader user wants too, right? They want to say, okay, give me the gist. So they pull up a list of headings, they can jump to that heading, and then they can navigate from there. So they can use those arrow keys to navigate from there. And then when they want to jump to interactive elements, they can press the tab key and get to those interactive elements. So they kind of have a way to navigate between the interactive elements and the non-interactive elements. Now, a keyboard user who can see, those are the people that don't want non-interactive stuff in the tab order because you are slowing them down. Those are the people that just want the interactive content in. But the screen reader users, they have ability to get to all the static content, headings, paragraphs, things like that. Does that answer that? Okay, cool. Yeah, go ahead.
Building, and whoever said they would move us out and move in can't do it. I love this building. I am a trainer, and so not a developer, but a trainer, and so we use a lot of times when we're trying to do web-based training, we use software like Articulate. Mm-hmm. And so my question is, I think it was a very interesting way to test your maybe training when I'm developing it, but I've noticed some of the training that we that are sent to us from other agencies or so forth. I noticed that a lot of participants have an issue when they are, like it'll show that the training was complete, but really it's not complete because they were unable to click certain boxes because you can only do it with the mouse. Mm-hmm. And so is there a way, as a trainer that's developing training, is there a way for us to test that when we're using a software like Articulate?
That's an awesome question. Yes, you should also test that with a keyboard. I'm not experienced with Articulate, but guess what? There's somebody in that room who is. April. Did you go find her?
I will.
Okay, yeah, April's got a demonstration over there of, I believe it's Articulate. And so she can definitely answer that question. But yeah, if there's something that's in your interface that a mouse user needs to click on, a keyboard user has to be able to activate that thing too. So it needs to be in the tab order, you need to be able to see tab focus, and you need to be able to activate it with the keyboard. And there's probably different ways to do that in Articulate. Last question?
I'm Kevin. I work with the Museum of Art. I'm curious, also a developer. I'm curious, so I usually test with your... I can't hear you.
Sorry, yeah, if you could come up to the mic, thanks. Our YouTube viewers can hear you too.
Okay. Oh, I would prefer to not be on camera. But I won't sue. My question is, so I use Narrator on Windows.
What is it called?
Narrator, like
Narrator.
the built-in screen reader for Windows. And so just for those that don't know in this room, Windows has Narrator built in, so that everybody has access to a screen reader that way. In the same way on Mac OS, there's something called VoiceOver. I'm curious to hear you speak about if the other screen readers that are out there, like JAWS, like paid professional screen readers, are they better for reasons? Are there other features that I don't have access to? Testing with Narrator alone.
Okay, yeah, great question. So, all right, so what was your name again? Kevin. All right, so Kevin uses this screen reader called Narrator for testing. It's awesome that you're doing screen reader testing yourself. So Narrator's built into Windows. There's other Windows screen readers, NVDA and JAWS. JAWS is one you have to pay for. NVDA is free. Macs have VoiceOver. Kevin mentioned it. So he asked, is Narrator, do I recommend Narrator? Well, I'm not a screen reader user, so I use it for testing. I don't use it for my daily life. But I would say the industry professionals that I've talked to, they say Narrator, not so good. So NVDA is an industry standard. That's what I use to test. In DIT, you can request that software. It's available. You just have to have the admin install it. If you're a Mac user, VoiceOver is installed on Mac. JAWS is probably maybe the most commonly used screen reader, but it's one you have to pay for. JAWS is awesome. So I would say JAWS and NVDA, VoiceOver, great screen readers. Narrator, I don't have experience with it. I've just only heard like it's so-so. Maybe it's getting better. I don't know. Okay, thanks, Liz.
Hey.
How good was that? So good. Thank you, John. Right. Again, I'll mention after, a little after 12, once we are wrapped, we're wrapping at 11:30 actually. No, we're wrapping at 12. John will still be available in the training room if you have questions, as will Phoebe and the other two areas that had interactive things for you to try out. Can't remember the names right now. But right now, I would love for you guys to give your attention to Donna Murray from DPI. She's going to talk about vendors and procurement considerations.
All right. Thanks, everyone, for having me. I am Donna Murray. I'm the Digital Accessibility Specialist at the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. And today we're going to talk about accessibility in project management and in procurement. And while I imagine that there are some folks who carry those hats through most of their roles in your respective agencies, I'm going to challenge all of you to think about how does this impact what I do, and how can I collaborate with those folks if I'm not involved in that day-to-day work with procurement? How can I collaborate with those staff members who are to ensure that we are procuring accessible solutions for all of our citizens? So when we're addressing it in projects, my whole focus today is around procurement, but I want to push back and say we really need to be talking about accessibility all the way back to the initiation of a project, because this is when we need to be defining who those stakeholders are, who our user groups are. We need to be thinking about the solicitation language that we're putting in our RFPs or our RFIs. Obviously, we need to be thinking about contract language, because as we're, not just when we're procuring something, but all the way through the contract and implementation timeline, we need to be thinking about who's going to be in charge of fixing things if they're not accessible. Who's going to pay for that? What are those nuances to the contract that we need to include to make sure that we're addressing accessibility all along? And then, as I just mentioned, all the way through implementation. So oftentimes I think when we do talk about accessibility in procurement, we're thinking about truly that procurement phase, right? We put out a bid, some vendors responded, and we might get some information, some documentation from them on what their accessibility features and functionality are or are not. But really, it needs to be addressed from beginning to end of a project. And when we think about why it matters, and we've talked about, and I've heard this kind of mentioned throughout today, certainly there's a legal component. And if you've not heard me speak before, this is one of my famous sayings is, if I can't get you to the table to talk about accessibility because it's a moral imperative, then let me tell you about the laws. And there are laws that are guiding this, and I think the leverage that we've had with the ADA Title II rule that came out in 2024 has been that it's been able to get people to the table. And if that's what gets you here, that'll get you here, and then hopefully along the way I can convince you that it's just the right thing to do. So certainly a reduced legal risk, but hopefully it also means that if we're proactively addressing accessibility, there's going to be less asks for support in that space, because we've already proactively dealt with it. It's definitely cheaper than trying to fix it after the fact. I think you can ask any vendor, or really any agency who has had like an Office of Civil Rights complaint or an ADA complaint, that trying to fix it after the fact is going to be more expensive, not just in funding, but also just in human resources and time. It's definitely going to give an opportunity for us to prove that we can be trusted. And what I mean by that is, we say we've got wonderful services and activities and programs, and that's great, but we need to practice what we preach. And so when we have accessible services, activities, and programs, we're building that trust with our stakeholders. And as we've talked about today, there are some folks who have to have these accessibility features because it is essential in order to access information. But really, it can be helpful for everyone. And our panel did a great job this morning of some of those questions where we were all raising our hands, and I think I raised my hand for everyone, and I told my neighbor, I said, a lot of these happened today, right? So there's a lot of, there's a lot of instances where it's not just about our people with disabilities. While that's critically important, it's actually bigger than that. It can be helpful for everyone. So in that project initiation, there are a few things that we need to think about. One, of course, is who are our users and what do they need? And you're going to hear me say this multiple times throughout our time together today, and that is we need to be talking to users with disabilities. We need to be hearing those experiences from them and getting their feedback on how or how not accessible our content and solutions are. We need to be looking at the market. And so as we're preparing on a project and we're thinking about a potential solution, we need to be looking at what is the current space, not just in terms of solutions that match our purpose, our procurement purpose, but also what does it look like for accessibility in the realm of those types of solutions? So if I'm out there looking for a mobile app that my customers are going to be logging into to access information, what does the market look like for those types of apps? Because if, generally speaking, those apps are just widely inaccessible, that could help inform what's going to be written in my solicitation language. If I already know some things that that I need to trigger in my mind when I'm meeting with these vendors, I need to be able to know, well, generally speaking, there's a lack of accessibility in this piece of those types of mobile apps. So having that market research done can be helpful. Understanding your internal readiness. Now, depending on how interactive the tool is, you may find that you're going to need some outside expertise in order to come in and help you vet those bids. That's not always the case. There's some times where even if you don't consider yourself very techie, even though there are some very technical standards in the WCAG standards, for generally speaking, if you're procuring a tool that is pretty static in nature, so maybe a web page, for example, versus something interactive where a user is going to interact and then get feedback and it's interactive, there's not as many standards that are going to apply like there would be for an interactive tool or a mobile app. So it may not be that you have to rely on a lot of expertise or outside expertise if you don't have anybody in-house to manage that review. But you need to be mindful of that and think about what is our internal readiness? What are we internally prepared to review, and what do we need to go ahead and be mindful of looking to help us when we get to that bid review? Everyone has a role and responsibility when it comes to accessibility, but I challenge us when we're thinking about procurement and project management teams to think about who needs to be at the table. And again, I'm going to say, make sure that at the table we've included users with disabilities. Otherwise, we're making some assumptions on what people need. Go ahead and start drafting your requirements. On my website, I meant to mention that I've got a resource document that I'll share with you at the end of the presentation that's chock full of resources, and one of those is some sample language for your solicitation documents. And then go ahead and start identifying what are your potential risks. And what I mean by that are, well, really some of the things we've already talked about. Do we really know our users? And if not, what's the risk of not really understanding what our users are going to need? Is there a risk with, again, that there's not really a lot out in the market that's accessible? And how are we going to mitigate that risk to make sure that folks have access even if the only options we have are some not fully accessible products? Those are things we need to be talking about at the beginning of our projects. Now, when we're talking about solicitation language, again, I've got some sample language that you can look at on my website, but really a couple of things to highlight. One, we need to make sure that we are addressing in our solicitation language what standards we're expecting our vendors to meet. And so certainly ADA Title II, I mentioned Title I in Section 504 here because that may come into play. Title I is specific to employee-facing content. Remember, Title II is about public-facing content. In the land of education, that's my hat that I just put on, that also includes our students, so that means instructional materials have to be accessible. But Section 504, there's some nuance there depending on where how you're funded, which federal agencies you might get funding from. So for example, HHS, the federal HHS, actually put out a rule that goes along with Section 504 that has the same WCAG requirements that ADA Title II has, but it also includes internal facing content. So we've mentioned today that there are some other civil rights laws and policies that speak to not just external facing, but internal facing. And then the other thing to mention in that your solicitation language is what documentation are you going to be expecting from those responses? So if you're going to be expecting a VPAT or an ACR, which we're going to talk about in a minute, then we need to make sure that we're articulating that. And if you're expecting them to give you a roadmap, especially if you already know by the market that there's probably not a lot of fully accessible solutions out there, then let's go ahead and proactively ask for that roadmap so that we're not having to ask for it later, because we will if we're not getting it up front. So in that accessibility review, there's a few things that we need to consider. One is, again, in the very next slide, we're going to talk about exactly what a VPAT and an ACR are. But there's also, I think, an opportunity for us to expand that review, because in a moment when I talk about that template and the report that you might get from vendors, or that we often ask for from vendors, there's still some information that's missing. I don't really get a good feel of what their commitment is to accessibility. Is it a culture thing, or did you just fill out the form, or did you even have a third party check it off and you can't even speak to it, right? So those supplementary questions we're going to talk about in just a moment. I push for us to have product demos. That does not always happen. At least I know here's my education hat again, at least in the land that I've worked in, we don't always have a product demo. It's hard for me to just go by that checklist that they submit. I want to see it. I want you to demo that keyboard testing. I want to see exactly how you use a screen reader with that solution, and show me if there are any gaps, what they are. And then a review summary. So I even have a document that you can access that you can take all of these pieces of information and documentation and compile them together so that then as a procurement team you can make recommendations of, is this a non-negotiable, or can we work on a roadmap with this vendor to help us make sure that we're moving towards accessible solutions. And then the last one is exceptions. There are, and I don't want us to hang our hat on these unless we have to, but there are some exceptions built into things like the ADA Title II rule. And there's even things like undue burden and fundamental alteration that we can hang our hat on. But we need to be cognizant about when and how we're going to hang our hat on something like that to have an inaccessible solution. Because we met an exception, that does not take us off the hook of ensuring that everyone who needs access gets access. So I do have some guiding questions on my website to help you think through, would this be a time that we could call or use the undue burden exception? That's definitely a conversation with legal, but there are some guiding questions to help you, draft your documentation if you do decide that. And sorry, the formatting on here is has shifted a little, but a VPAT, anybody familiar with a VPAT? I see some hands up. So a VPAT is a voluntary product accessibility template. And obviously the short acronym for that is a VPAT. Oftentimes we use that interchangeably with the word AC or the acronym ACR. Let me go to the next slide and show you that. So sometimes these are used interchangeably, and oftentimes we'll say, did we get a VPAT from the vendor? Or I've got to review the VPAT. Really, it's just the industry standard template. And there are multiple templates. The one we're going to be looking at, or the one that we need to be asking vendors to complete, is the VPAT that says WCAG. Because those are the standards that we're going to be asking vendors to say, do you meet these standards? And so they fill out that template, and then of course the completed template would be that report, the ACR. But again, oftentimes we'll say VPAT even after it's completed. So sometimes those are used interchangeably. So generally speaking, that's what we ask for when we ask for a documentation from a vendor. The conformance levels that show up on, or that we are asking vendors to complete are, do you support it? So if there's a WCAG standard about keyboard focus, like John was just telling us about, do you support that? Do you partially support it? Are there instances where that's not being supported? Do you not support it at all? Is it not built into the functionality of your platform? Or is it not applicable? That's great. The conformance levels, honestly, that's great. It's a great first lens, but the remarks section, the open-ended remarks section, that's where you really see whether or not they can fully explain what they're supporting or not supporting or why it doesn't apply, okay? So the remarks section is such a key component, and it's very important that we're pushing our vendors to actually complete that with as much detail as possible. So there are some benefits to that VPAT/ACR. Certainly, it's a great first lens. It's going to give us at least a little bit of insight into how that vendor is working on accessibility, or what function already exists within their product that's accessible. It's a great starting point for discussions. Even if you don't have a techie hat that you're wearing, you can still go through a VPAT and be able to see which sections you're going to need some clarification on, maybe some questions that could be answered in a demo. So it's a great place as a starting point, as a launch pad for discussions with vendors. But there are some limitations. Now, some vendors will actually have a third party complete the VPAT, so they'll do the external review, and I think there's benefits to that. But sometimes it's, again, this third-party review, but the vendor themselves can't even speak to what the report says, right? That's a red flag for me. But if a third party is also nice in that it is hopefully a non-biased review of the product, but oftentimes it is self-reported. So you kind of have to take it for what that's worth. Sometimes it's pretty clear when I'm reading a VPAT if they really understand accessibility or they don't, because they'll misinterpret some of the language, and so their answer doesn't make any sense. That's a red flag for me. That tells me that there's sort of a lack of internal knowledge about the standards. It's also not a substitute. So oftentimes with a VPAT, we might read that the vendor has said, here's how we completed our VPAT. We did some automated testing. Well, that's great. But what I haven't heard from them is, did you do any manual testing? Because as we've learned, there's some human context that comes into play when we're talking about accessibility. And again, I told you I'm going to say this a lot of times today, did you talk to any users? Did you have any user testing? Did you include people with disabilities all through your product development? If you didn't, I want to know why, and I want to know how that's going to change for future iterations of your product. So ACR or a VPAT is great, but it's important to recognize what it can do and what it can't do. Now, these are what I call features of a good ACR or an effective ACR or VPAT. Again, very detailed. The more detailed, the better. Because if you have a vendor who has said, we support this standard, and then they left the remarks blank because they support it, so what is there to say? I want to know what you mean by that. You mean it's supported for all different user types? Do you mean it's supported on the mobile app as well as the website? Do you mean that it's supported in your training materials? Tell me what you mean, whether it's support, not support, partially supported, or even not applicable. Because sometimes I'll see a lot of NAs. Like, for example, there's no alt text, NA. You don't have any images anywhere? Sometimes that's hard to believe, especially if I know what type of solution we're looking for. So it's important to recognize that there's some things that we should expect in an ACR, and that includes a lot of detail. Some specific examples, that user testing again. Are they being transparent? And this is one of the things that I have really pushed with vendors when I've met with vendors is, I appreciate that you're trying to sell your best self, right? Your best product. But at the end of the day, I need you to be vulnerable about what limitations there are, because we're going to have to get to an accessible product, And the only way we're going to get there is if we truly understand what the current situation is. And then addressing all user interfaces. This is a biggie that I just don't see happening a lot, at least in the land of education. And that is when a vendor submits a VPAT or an ACR, they are looking at one particular user group. So let's say, for example, it's a piece of curriculum that's a digital curriculum. Then the user group that they're addressing in their VPAT is students. But there's a whole admin and teacher and parent section where parents can log in and see how their students are doing. We've got admin and teachers who can go in and see reports, and they haven't addressed that at all. So it's important to think in mind, as they're submitting their VPAT or their ACR, these are the things, these are the green flags that we're looking for. Are they addressing every user? There are some red flags as well, and these are some of the things that I have come across in some of my reviews. One, is it outdated? I recently went through a procurement, served on a procurement team, and the VPAT was completely filled and was actually pretty detailed, but it was from a previous version of their product. So it's really not even worth the time to review it at that point, because I don't know what carried over or what has been changed in the new iteration of the product. So pay attention to the version that they've referenced on the document, as well as the date that it was completed. Sometimes I'll see things like a generic explanation that says supported in all instances. And then that's just copied and pasted every time they put the word support. That's just leave it off if you're going to do that. I need detail. What do you mean it's supported in all instances? Are there instances in every piece of the solution, or just in a specific section or user interface? So, those are the types of things that are going to prompt you to think about, oh, this is a question I need some clarification on. I see some vendors that, again, will do does not support or NA, and then they tell me nothing else about it. That's going to need some follow-up, because that's not telling me enough information to understand exactly why they, I've reviewed some before that have lots of NAs. And knowing the type of solution I'm looking for, I'm expecting some of those standards to be covered, and you're telling me it's not even applicable. So that tells me again that that I need to ask some follow-up questions, but honestly, it may be even a red flag that tells me they're not even really sure if they understand accessibility in the first place. There are times where there's contradictions, and I'll talk about John's. I wonder how John got that cardboard keyboard in his vehicle. That has been on my mind since he presented it. Sorry. There are contradictions sometimes. So for example, if I have a vendor that says, yes, we're keyboard accessible, and then they put, well, but we don't have keyboard focus. We do not support that. That's a contradiction. Like, how, okay, I can't get trapped, but you're telling me I don't have focus? That tells me that, I'm going to need some clarification. So in my documentation that I have as a resource, I have some of those contradictions to look for. So if they've answered supports on this but does not support on this, that's going to be a question that you're going to want to follow up on. And another thing, surprise, surprise, do they have any user testing? Because if not, that's a red flag. Have they said that they've done any AT testing or any screen reader testing? Maybe they said they only use narrator in their screen reader testing. I want to know, what else did you use? And if not, then that's going to be a follow-up I'm going to expect you to do before our next meeting. Now, some of us are not very techy. Some of us may not be able to follow along with that code that John had up here earlier, and that's okay. You can still have a role and a voice in this work. So if you're a non-tech reviewer, I challenge you, don't turn away from the accessibility stuff, because that's just going to be somebody else's job. I encourage you to look at it, and you can at least look through and say, is there enough detail here? Did they tell their accessibility story? If there's a lack of detail, or if there's some incomplete sections, or they didn't respond to some of the standards, if they didn't talk about user testing, those are things that you, even as a non-techie, could bring up in those vendor conversations. And then, of course, well, that goes along with the follow-up. You could ask those questions. I actually have some demo scripts that built out on my website that you could use, even if you're non-techie. I've got some guiding questions for you of some things that you could ask in the demo to have them provide some clarity. Now, these are some issues that I say are common issues, and I've got some additional guidance on the website for these, but these are things that I have come across when I've gone through some procurements, looking at the VPAT and the ACR. One is just an area of focus. Remember, again, not all the user interfaces are covered. Usually it's just one user interface that they've addressed. Sometimes I see an over-reliance on the VPAT or the ACR, and what I mean by that is we receive it, we say check on our list of things we expected in the RFP response, and then we move on. We take them at their word, they said they're accessible, so the end of it. That may be fine in terms of who's going to be responsible for it down the road. We can say, hey vendor, you said, but we're still going to end up with an inaccessible solution. So over-reliance on the ACR is sometimes an issue that I've seen. Just focusing on compliance. Yes, we can check all the standards off, but if it's not usable, then we're still missing the boat. So again, involve users and get their feedback. The lack of demo, I talked about that, how important that is. Making those assumptions about users, that is usually a common issue. And siloed expertise, and this is where I say, you've got that one person on the team that's in charge of doing the accessibility review. And I'm going to challenge us all to find a space in that. You don't have to be the person that reviews the entire VPAT, but I bet you could go through and at least get an indication by reading through it to get an indication of what the culture and commitment is. One of the things that I do when I am looking at a potential solution is I go to the product's webpage. Sometimes a product or a company will even have an accessibility page. And I go right there and try to use a keyboard to get through it. Or I'll go right there and I'll try to use an automated checker. And if I find errors, that tells me that we're spinning a story that we don't necessarily believe in. And so I'm going to have some follow-up questions about that. So that's kind of my litmus test sometimes when I think about the commitment of accessibility is how accessible are just your public-facing PR pages around your product. So I do have a full document that will help you through all of these steps that we've just talked about. It's a guidance document for anyone who's reviewing an ACR. So it's going to have some of those contradictions, some of those guiding questions, things to think about before you send out the RFP, and sample language, all of the things. I've kind of got it compiled in this one document for you. But I'm going to challenge us to think about even beyond the VPAT or the ACR, and these were those supplemental questions that I think I mentioned a number of slides ago. Because in the VPAT, or in the template itself, the VPAT template itself, there are some basic information fields that they complete at the top. When was this completed? What version was it of the product? But it's missing some of the meat. And what I mean by that is I want like a full narrative about what your commitment to accessibility is. And if someone has issues with your product, some accessibility issues, what is the support mechanism or mechanisms that you have in place to help them? That's what I've built out in these supplemental questions. So I encourage you, if it's possible within the scope of your agency, to not only request the VPAT, but to request that they answer these additional questions, because I think it's going to give you greater insight that's just not covered in that standard by standard VPAT review. I also have a vendor guide. So I did a 6-part webinar series specifically for vendors, because as you'll hear me say in a minute, I think this has to be a collaborative effort, especially until we all get our feet under us and until the market catches up with the accessibility needs that we have. So I have a vendor guide that is specifically to help them write the kind of ACR that we're looking for, so that we're not getting the incomplete one and then having to loop back and say we need additional answers or information. Hopefully we can cut some of that time and effort out by having them understand really what we need from the beginning. So I have a vendor guide to support that. Now, when it comes to actually, we get through this process, we found a tool that we can live with, it's accessible, or at least accessible enough, and we've got a roadmap idea of how they're going to improve. These are some things that we might need to consider including in our contract language. So on my website, I actually have full statements that you might want to include within your contract that cover things like, what's the remediation plan going to be for things that are inaccessible? What's your roadmap? Who's going to cover the cost if that happens? What happens when there's updates to the product? Who's going to be in charge of that financially, and how are we going to, how is the time frame going to be determined for those updates? And honestly, I think it's an opportunity for us to even build in contract language to say, we want to be partners in that work, and we want to help you prioritize what's going to be on your roadmap. So that leads me to this, collaboration with vendors. I do think it's important. I think it's so important because, again, we're learning, they're learning too. The market, generally speaking, for digital solutions out there is pretty inaccessible still. There's certainly pockets of accessible products, but generally speaking, there's still a lot of work to be done. So I think the best thing that we can do is, as much as possible, work hand in hand. And so I've got some strategies on my website to help you think about how could we approach a vendor and request that this be a collaborative effort, that we're involved in giving some user feedback and then working with them to prioritize that roadmap. I think that that's a huge piece that we may be missing. So in my webinar series with vendors, I did a whole webinar on this, and I challenged vendors. If you are going to a client and they're not talking about accessibility, then you bring it up. It's an opportunity, I think, for that to be both ways, for us to learn together and to push each other to grow with accessible content. And I love this quote. I came across this quote on well, it was Twitter at the time, X now, from a disabled user. And I love this perspective. As a person with a disability, it's frustrating to hear that when a non-disabled user encounters a feature that does not allow them to proceed, it's considered a bug to fix. When a user with a disability meets the same, we hear, we're doing accessibility in the future. So I challenge us to, that's some food for thought. I'm challenging us to think about who are we willing to leave behind in this work. One of the things that I spent some time digging into were the self-assessments of federal government agencies, because I feel like that's as close to what we're talking about, and they've already been living this type of accessibility work for a number of years now because they've been held to Section 508 standards, which is not exactly the same as what we're held to with ADA. They have to meet with CAG 2.0, and we have to meet 2.1, but it's pretty similar in when you think about most of them starting from scratch like we have. So in the Section 508 self-assessments, I paid attention to the open-ended responses, where they were asked what works, what didn't work, what have been your challenges, and these were the trends that I found. Lack of cross-team coordination. So we don't have, our trainers talking to our IT folks. We don't have our IT folks talking to our procurement teams. So that cross-team coordination was lacking. The ones who felt like they weren't being successful also said, we just don't have any structured processes in place. It's just kind of ad hoc. And that once the contract is signed, it's like we don't talk to the vendor anymore. So the ones who said we're not being as successful as we feel like we should be, these are some of the trends that they said were some barriers. And one of the things that I continued to see elevated for the ones that said this has been successful for us was that collaboration piece. Not just collaboration with vendors, although that was included. It was also about collaboration across teams, across agencies. I heard someone mention the issue with, or the challenge with, just an awareness campaign, just getting the word out. The more we can collaborate, I think, across our agencies, across our teams, the better the better we're going to be able to bridge that gap. Find accessibility champions and lift them up. If you have someone who is really leading the work with accessibility, give them a microphone and give them an opportunity to be celebrated, because there's going to have to be some small wins that we celebrate along the way. We can't just wait until we hit the big mile markers along our roadmap. The webinar series that I mentioned earlier, I have all of the slide decks and the recordings on my website. So I challenge you, when you're going through a project management process, when you're working with vendors, point them there. If they don't know about accessibility, say, please go explore the resources and the webinars to help you get your feet under you when it comes to accessibility. And I actually have built out maturity models that can help not just vendors, but also our public school units, and I've even got a maturity model for local and state government that will allow you to kind of get an idea of what your current landscape is across 10 different dimensions, including risk mitigation, roles and responsibilities, procurement, and it's just a chance for you to think about where are we, and then how do we move forward from where we are. So I have some example growth strategies on there. I've got some planning templates, lots of resources for you to help you and your teams decide where you are and how to get better. My digital accessibility website is linked here, but it's also in the resource document that I will be sharing in just a couple of slides. And that's where you can find everything. I kind of highlighted the procurement page because that's where a lot of these specific resources are. This is my girl. This is Olivia, my daughter. She's 20 years old, and she has multiple disabilities. And she has never called me mama. But a few weeks ago, she'll do some scripting, but that's about it in terms of her communication, speaking communication. But a few weeks ago, I was sitting with her, and I was trying to explain to her that I was going to be retiring in a few weeks. And she said, clear as a bell, I'll have you all to myself. And so as I stand here today, wrapping up the final presentation in a 29-year career in education, I'm going to challenge you to think about her when you're thinking about making content accessible. And think about a lot of us in this room who are challenged with some disability that may keep us from accessing the services and programs and activities that we have, these wonderful things that we're providing for citizens. And think about all of the citizens that we serve, because while it is essential for some, it is helpful for everyone. So here's my resource document, and thank you for having me today.
Wow, what a powerful way to stop. Thank you so much, Donna. So now I understand. I don't know about you, but I could like feel her passion for all of that, and it really put it into context. Thank you. Wow, this was such a jam-packed morning. It feels like we've been here all day already, and it's really good. So at this point, I just want to say thank you, guys. Thanks so much for coming out. I hope you found something that you get to take back. Even, you know, I'm on the team. I feel like I wrote down a bunch of nuggets for myself. Thank you for those of you who joined us online. We were very excited to be able to offer the streaming today. And I have to, if you will indulge me, say thank you so much to the Digital Services Manager, Elena Talenker. As well as the NCDIT communications team, for whom this would not have been possible. Getting all of this set up for us and allowing us to do the stream. So thank you guys so much. So I hope you have a great winter. And feel free again to stop by the interactive sessions before you go. Thank you so much.